We call the meeting to order if we can, and welcome everyone to the another online meeting of the FSU Board of Trustees, and thanks everyone for being here and participating. I think we'll start with Lena. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Trustee Alvarez.
Here.
Trustee Ballard.
Here.
Trustee Burr.
Here.
Trustee Bazette.
Here.
Trustee Chicken.
Here.
Trustee Duda.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Here.
Trustee Henderson.
Here.
Trustee Levin.
Here.
Trustee Mateer. Trustee Sasser. Trustee Sembler. Trustee Thiel.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. I think I heard everyone but Trustee Mateer and Trustee Sembler, and if they come in, I'm sure they'll let us know. And again, thanks everyone for being here. A little bit of housekeeping. Remember, if you're going to speak, to identify yourself, and also probably while not speaking, it's probably best to keep your phones on mute. If you can remember to unmute when you speak, that's always helpful. But I make that mistake often, so someone will correct you if you don't, but it'll always be good. Our first order of business will be to approve the minutes from our April 17th meeting. Those have been sent out. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Does anyone have any objection to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved. We always have time, no matter whether it's a online format or in person, for public comment. And I have been advised there are 4 people who have asked to speak this morning. But I will recognize each of you and in the order that they have given to me. And if I don't do the name just right, please accept my apologies in advance. But the first one I have is the Chief Negotiator for UFF FSU GAU. It's Vincenza Antonetta Berardo. Vincenza, you're recognized. Are you with us? All right, I will go on, and if Vincenza, if I'm saying that right, joins us, then we'll let.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Of course, I still had problems with technology.
Okay,
Hi,
Vincenza,
yes,
you're
thank
recognized.
you. I just wanted to say I stand in solidarity with the Graduate Assistants Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us this morning. Next, I have Michael Yost, who's a grad student. Michael, you're recognized.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Michael.
All right. Good morning, trustees. My name is Michael Yost. I'm a PhD student in economics, and I'm asking you today to offer fee relief. People who know me could tell you that I hate talking about myself, but I think that context is important before I tell you what fee relief would mean to me. I don't come from a wealthy family. For the past 2 years since Hurricane Michael, my only immediate family member, my mother, has been living on my couch after she was made homeless by that disaster. She is 71 years old and disabled and cannot work. She lost nearly all of her life savings in the 2008 financial crisis. I provide the main source of income for my household. When I came here, I was promised a full ride, that my schooling would be provided for as long as I did labor for this university. Despite this promise, FSU has failed to live up to its side of that bargain. Every semester, I pay student fees which sum to nearly $1,000 per semester. While some might argue that these fees are necessary to pay for costs for the classes that I take, that they incur, this is not the case. Over the last 5 years working as a graduate teacher and researcher for FSU, I have paid $16,949.24 back to my employer in student fees. Even then, for 2.5 years, as I have been working on my dissertation, I have not taken actual classes, only filler prelim and dissertation hours that are required as a condition of my continued employment for FSU. Every dollar in fees is money that I cannot use to pay rent, to pay bills, to pay for food and healthcare and other necessities. I firmly believe that no employee should have to pay to work at their job, and I am imploring you to offer immediate fee relief to the 3,000 graduate assistants who teach many of the classes at and perform vital research for this university. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Appreciate that. Next, we have Haley Lemoyne, also a grad student. Haley, you're recognized. Haley, are you with us? Are you on mute? Or if not, I'll move on and come back to you. Let's move on. And maybe the next one I have that is asked to speak is Katie Moore, who's a student.
Hi, good morning, trustees. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Katie Moore. I am a 5th year PhD student in the Modern Languages Department, and I would like to urge the Board of Trustees to consider lowering or reimbursing the cost of certain fees to students for the duration of campus closures due to the COVID-19 crisis. It is unfair for the university to continue to impose fees that pay for services to which students do not have access. The university has already acknowledged that taking money from students for services unable to be rendered is unethical by refunding a prorated portion of housing and meal costs for the spring semester. The waiving or reimbursing of similarly affected fees is the next logical and ethical step for the university to take in order to make whole its students who are no longer allowed to access campus and the services that they pay for with their student fees. I am asking in particular that the university waive or reimburse at least the following fees for any and all semesters in which the FSU campus remains closed as a result of COVID-19: athletics, facilities, and transportation. While there are no athletic events for university students to participate in or attend, while the Seminole Express routes are not running, while the wear and tear on parking lots is greatly reduced, and while students are not able to access facilities on campus, the university should not continue collecting money to pay for such services. While these fees might seem like an insignificant amount of money for any given student, I assert that they are not. I am currently employed for 10 hours per week for the summer B session, a total of 60 hours of work at the minimum stipend allowable per the CBA. However, as a BA and doctoral student, I am required to enroll in dissertation hours for the summer and therefore pay $929.72 in fees. These fees total more than 80% of my entire summer stipend. After fees, I will make $224.08 for 60 hours of work. That's about $3.73 per hour pre-tax. If the university were to reimburse the athletics, facilities, and transportation fees, I would more than double my gross pay for the summer semester. It is for this and the previous stated reasons that I encourage the Board of Trustees to do the ethical thing and reimburse those fees affected by the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for sharing your comments. Let me back up and see if Haley has joined us. Haley,
Yeah, sorry.
Haley, you're recognized.
Can you hear
You're a
me now?
grad student.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Haley, you're recognized.
Thank you. Sorry about that earlier. My name's Haley, as was just said, and I am a first-year doctoral student here at FSU. And just like Katie and Michael said, I am here to talk to you about student fees and the very large burden that they put on graduate students and undergraduate students alike. Like Michael, my family has also experienced substantial financial burden due to this virus. Well, my family in particular was due to this virus. And this burden is only getting heavier as the economic crisis continues. In order not to echo the things that they said exactly, I did want to say that I also wanted to point out that some of the fees that you have us pay are paid to work fees, the facilities use fee in particular, and the technology fee are asking graduate students to pay for work so that we can pay to work so that we can work for you. Additionally, in comparison to other similarly ranked universities, we pay substantially more in fees than we would if we had gone to other universities, which are certainly lower. For example, at University of Virginia, we would have paid $0 in fees versus the over $900 that were paid this last semester. UF, it would be about half of the fees that we pay here at FSU, which is a burden for us and is pulling good talent away from FSU. Just like Michael and Katie, I ask that you reimburse the cost of student fees for services not used during this pandemic, and that you also consider reducing this really heavy fee burden in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Haley, and thank you all for your comments. Lena, that concludes everyone that I had provided notice to want to speak. Lena, has anyone else registered to speak?
No.
If not, we'll close the public comment portion, and thank each of you all for sharing your thoughts. I will ask our Vice President of Finance Administration to follow up with me on those issues and have an answer, make sure that we have an answer by our next board meeting on those issues. But thank you very much. As we do each of our meetings, I want to take a moment and read the ethics and conflict of interest statement. I begin our meeting with a reminder to board members about our ethics policy and obligations imposed by that policy in Florida law. Trustees are public officers of the state of Florida who are invested with public trust and appointed as fiduciaries of the university. The Board of Trustees ethics policy that governs our conduct requires us to disclose any conflicts of interest present for any trustee, trustee's family member, or trustee's business associate, as those terms are defined by the policy. Having reviewed the agenda for today's meeting and having had the opportunity to consult with the General Counsel and the ethics officer about any potential actual or perceived conflict, does any trustee wish to disclose any matter that may impact his or her ability to discuss or vote on any agenda item? Trustees, anything? All right, we'll move forward. I do want to take a personal moment to share some thoughts. Right now our community and FSU and our family are hurting. Our university and our administration have always been committed to diversity and inclusion, but we also recognize that we can do things better. This is a poignant time to realize that we need to take a closer look at what we do, what we are doing, and listen. And yes, listen and learn how we can make long-term sustainable changes to ensure that every person on our campus and part of our family is given the dignity and respect they deserve, and is given the opportunity to realize their full potential. I know we are committed to this. I know our administration is committed to this effort, and I'm certain FSU will lead by example on this journey. President Thrasher, I will now turn it over to you for your report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for those remarks. I appreciate it. I know our staff and our students and faculty all appreciate those remarks, and I think they're very pertinent as we are in some difficult times, no question about it. I personally want to thank everybody, all the members of the board, for everything you've done, your dedication, your support during these, I would say, unusual and certainly challenging times. I thought our committee meetings yesterday were great. Chairman and I had a little conversation about that, and we might consider continuing that type of format. I thought it went really well, and I appreciate all the hard work that all of you all did to prepare for that meeting, those committee meetings. As Chairman said, a lot's happened around the country since we last met in April. And we continue on our staff, as we talked about yesterday, and we'll continue today to talk about in more detail how to address and prepare for the opening of the university. The university's open, but I guess the real opening would be in fall. And we're going to be able to continue to work on that and provide you with a lot more detail about that at an upcoming special board meeting. Also, I know you know, and Chairman alluded to this, that we've seen protests around the country, and we've seen protests here in Tallahassee in response to the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Like many others, I have publicly condemned the actions of the Minneapolis police officers who were involved in that incident and called for justice. I know many of our students and faculty and staff are still rightfully upset and angry about the case, as well as other incidents of racial violence across our nation. As the chairman said, we're hurting here in Tallahassee, and America is certainly hurting. And I know that many of our students are too. Vice President Amy Hecht and I have she has had several meetings. I've had at least one very candid conversation with a group of students, and then individually with some others. And we've started sharing those concerns locally with our city leaders in an effort to what we believe will improve our relationships here in Tallahassee. Yesterday, I think most of you know, I received a response from Mayor John Daly, who agreed, along with Chief Revel, to meet with some of us as soon as possible, hopefully as early as next week, to discuss and begin a dialogue on some of these issues and continue that conversation. As I said to some of you yesterday, words mean a lot, but actions mean more. And it's our intent to continue to work with the city leaders, work with our student leaders, work with our faculty to ensure that that our students and others, that we are listening to their concerns and are committed, as the chairman said, to ensuring that Florida State University and the surrounding community, which we live in here in Tallahassee, is a place where every single person is treated with respect and dignity and feels safe at home and certainly on our campus. We will keep you advised of those actions as they develop, and certainly keep all of you in the loop as we move ahead in those discussions. I wanted to just comment on a couple of other things. I think since we last met, I think most of you know, we celebrated our spring graduation with a very successful virtual commencement ceremony on May the 2nd. We streamed that ceremony on Facebook, YouTube, WFSU, and we estimate that we had a live audience of about 20,000 people. I would tell you that's a little bit less than what we have for our real graduations in person. We usually average between 8,000 and 9,000 per graduation. But that was a significant number, and it could be more actually. But it was gratifying to know that even though we were apart during this what we would certainly call a momentous occasion for our graduates and their families and friends, we all shared the experience at the same time. The highlight, I believe, of the event, and I want to give a real shout out to the commencement speech by School of Communications teaching Professor Mark Ziegler. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go back and check it out on YouTube. Mark did a great job of reminding all of us the reasons that we love Florida State University so deeply. We're still working on with others to schedule our summer commencement, and we will be hearing more about that in the days to come. On a sad note, we were all stunned when Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Karen Lachlan, passed away on May 4th. I took part in a lot of recognition ceremonies and a lot of other activities with Karen over the years since I've been here, including this spring commencement that I referred to. We know her love for students was always it always shone through. We'll miss her. We'll miss her very much. Sally and I have discussed, and she has appointed Assistant Provost Joe O'Shea to be named the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and we know he will honor Karen's legacy by continuing the commitment to student success. In regard to student achievement, our students continue to impress all of us here at the university. They are achieving at the highest levels and winning national awards and fellowships, including several that have been announced in the past month. We have 9 student Fulbrights, 7 National Science Foundation graduate fellows, 4 Boren scholars, 2 critical language scholars, and 1 Hollings scholar offered by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Incredible students who are doing great things. I want to thank Adrian Stevenson at the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards, and our good friend and always working hard for these young folks, Craig Filer, for everything that the Office of National Fellowships have done as they work to help our students excel at the higher levels. Our summer sessions A, B, F, and Law are now underway, and the classes are being taught remotely. And we're certainly preparing for the most popular session, which is Summer C, which will start on June 22nd. We expect about 2,200 new freshmen, as we discussed yesterday in committee, that will begin college careers at FSU by taking their courses in Summer C. Student Affairs, undergraduate studies, and other divisions are offering online programs and doing a number of things that to ensure that these new students feel welcome and a part of the FSU community, even though we're not together on campus yet. As far as the fall is concerned, I know everybody's eager to hear about what's in store for the fall semester, and we appreciate your patience, and certainly we appreciate your thoughts and ideas as we coordinate these many moving parts to get our campus back to some normalcy. We're now in the process of completing that plan, as I said, with a combination of face-to-face classes as well as remote learning. Sally McCroy is leading that effort as she always does in a very successful way. And we look forward to the feedback that we will get at our June 18 meeting when we talk about this exclusively. We'll present that plan to you then, and then subject to your approval, present it to the Board of Governors on June 23rd in Orlando at a live understand meeting. I want to assure you that every component of the plan that we are developing has the one major concern that I have suggested throughout all of this, and that is to be sure that the health and safety and well-being of all of our students and faculty and staff are in mind when we begin to commence this new venture in the fall. On a personal note, I want to acknowledge and thank, before I close, Vice President Tom Jennings for his service to FSU for the past 10 years. As you know, Tom has accepted a position of Vice President of the University Advancement at Washington Lee University, where he previously worked for, I believe, 10 years. Tom's done a terrific job in creating a culture of giving at FSU, so that we are so grateful for his leadership during the university's $1 billion Raise the Torch campaign. More recently, he and the foundation staff have launched a successful fundraising efforts to support our students and employees who are struggling with job loss and unexpected expenses during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll miss Tom, and certainly miss his lovely wife, Dawn, who also worked for us for a number of years, as you know. But I know they are excited to get back to being closer to their families, and we wish them the very best. I know you've got a busy agenda today, and so I'll stop in just a second, but I want to thank everybody on our senior leadership team and the entire board for the work on the important university business that we're taking up today. I know one of the key elements of everything we do is our budget, and I particularly want to thank Chairman Sasser, and I want to thank Kyle Clark and his team and all the folks who've worked on so many of our budgets that are so uncertain at this time because of the COVID crisis, because of the unusual expenses we've incurred, and because we have yet to receive our actual budget from the state government. A lot of uncertainties out there, but you all have done a tremendous job, and I appreciate the great work of that. But every single day, I can assure you that this staff is working hard. I think I will tell you, like I've said to my staff many times, about 2 months ago, I didn't know how to spell Zoom, and now I feel like my whole life is on Zoom. I hope we can get back to some normalcy in the fall. That's what we're all looking forward to. I mentioned Chief Brown. I know she and her team have done a fabulous job over the last number of days, not only supporting our students and faculty, but supporting the community at large. And I want to give her and her team an incredible shout out for that. Good days are ahead of us. The best days are ahead of us, and we're gonna be successful. Thank you again for everything you've done, and hope we have a great meeting today. Thank you, Chairman.
President Thrasher, and you know, it is so many things are happening. But you almost forget our main goal, which is educating students. We're doing a good job of that every day, and I know we're committed to that and making sure that our students are able to fulfill their dreams. So I thank you, the administration, our faculty, for staying committed to our core mission and doing it so well. Does anyone have any questions or comments for President Thrasher?
Hey, Chairman, just want to let you know Craig Mateer is on.
All right, yes, I understand Craig is on, and also I think Trustee Sembler has joined us as well. So thank you both for joining with us. Next, we have our consent agenda items. Your consent agenda was 8 items, A through H. I have requested for the removal of the academic calendar from the consent agenda. I'd like to request that and be moved to our provost presentation. I think it merits discussion. Not that there's any controversy about it, but I want a full communication of the changes in the calendar or how the calendar is being affected. And I think it deserves a separate discussion and a separate vote. So unless someone objects, we'll move that to Provost McCrory's presentation. Does anyone have any other item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent items B through H?
So moved, Jim Henderson.
We had Henderson, and I think I heard Trustee Alvarez as a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Consent agenda is now approved. Now we'll move on to new business. And our first one, we'll hear from our Provost McCrory. And Jim Henderson chairs that committee for us. Jim, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, and always a great pleasure. You know, as a committee chairman, you want great talent around you, supporting you, making you look better than you are. And Sally, thank you for doing that. And I know your task of looking at dealing with faculty, student, the planning, the state, the schedule, keeping the kids safe, extraordinary task falling upon you and the entire staff at FSU. But we know you've worked hard at it. I think in our committee, very pleased about the feedback of all the things you've done and looking at, I think, a very viable fall term there to give us specifics on as to keeping the kids safe with that. So with that, Sally?
Thank you, Trustee Henderson. I appreciate your kind words. We do have a great team here in every respect. I'm going to be showing a few slides, and then at the end of those slides, we'll come back to the calendar. Chairman Burr, if that's okay with you.
Sally, I'll need access to share the slides.
Oh, I thought you had access.
Sally, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Thank you, Sally.
Rick, you have access?
I do not have access yet.
I thought you did.
I thought it as well, sorry.
Okay, well, I'll just say what I'm going to say. You don't have to look at pictures. I want to thank both Chairman Burr and our president for their comments on the situation that we find ourselves in this country and the good work and hard work that all of us need to do to make things better. I think that we are a campus where that can happen in a big way, and I'm proud of our students, faculty, and staff, and how everybody has handled that kind of situation to date, and look forward to talking and listening, and especially listening, as the president said, to see what kinds of things we can do or change to make things even better. Our FSU community is one, I think, that has a big heart, and our students of all kinds, and faculty as well, and staff appreciate that, I think, and have a lot of loyalty to FSU, as we all do, and with good reason. So we look forward to making that even better. It's been a really, really challenging time, as you might imagine, since the last time we spoke. In April, I was talking about converting 10,000 classes to online delivery and training over 1,000 faculty and staff to use Zoom. like our president learned, and other technologies, and adjusting to remote final exams. The implementation, there we go. The implementation of all of that to that new normal, providing hardship laptops for students and faculty who needed them, and staff, and webcams to hundreds of our students so that they could actually complete their semester, and most did extremely well. Our students really persisted. We reached out to many of them, and we saw a larger number of bachelors graduate this spring than in the past 2 years, which we were very proud of. However, we also experienced a slight uptick in the number of students who registered for graduation and then decided to defer to a later term. But they're still in line to register to graduate, and we are working with each one of them to make sure that they do that in as timely a manner as possible. Our students persisted, and our faculty responded by changing their pedagogy and adapting new techniques for teaching. I was extremely proud of all our faculty, instructional staff, our teaching assistants, everybody who helped all across campus. Now I'd like to walk you through the preparation we've done to ensure the quality of our FSU education, while taking the time to recognize and celebrate some of the efforts of so many people and how they're making a difference at FSU. You've heard that we have this plan for reopening. It is one that we are continuing to work on. I would say it's close to being in a final draft form, and I look forward to sharing it with you on June the 18th at the next special session of the Board of Trustees. This, of course, will go to the BOG and then be approved, I assume, at our meeting with them at UCF on June the 23rd. We've done all kinds of things that you might imagine. We've had to look at every classroom space that we can use to make sure that there is the ability to have 6 feet distance all around between every individual person, students and faculty. And we are identifying which courses can be taught in what times and in what rooms to spread things out as much as possible. The priority for face-to-face classes has been decided to be the lab courses, mostly senior science courses that are unable to be taught otherwise, and those courses that we call experiential, like music, that are very, very difficult to teach in other ways. So it's those courses we know will be face-to-face. We are also working to provide some general education or lower division courses face-to-face as well, so that our newest students, who I tend to worry about the most, will have some face-to-face opportunities. And the rest of the courses will be online or remote. Our registrar, Kim Barber, has worked with all our deans and faculty and administrators and many other groups to look at all of these challenges. So we are looking at many expert resources that we have to help our faculty convert their classes for both summer and fall semesters. Leslie Richardson and her staff at CAT, the Center for Advancement of Teaching, have been working with lots and lots of faculty, providing insights and training for them to adapt it to the latest teaching research. She has also worked closely with Ravi Fusile, who runs our Office of Distance Learning, whose staff includes specialize in online delivery of course, and they've been working really hard with all kinds of people all across campus, helping them become familiar with our new, still relatively new, learning management system called Canvas, which we haven't had very long, but which all the courses are now based in. Jane Livingston and her team in information technology services have also been working together with Robbie and Leslie and many others to make sure that students, faculty, and staff are encountering each other in a very positive way online and identifying resources to help redesign courses. The challenge is if we don't our challenge is that we don't need to adapt a few courses. We need to adapt most courses to be delivered online. And this may include some courses that are scheduled to be face-to-face, but need to be planning for some online components in case we are forced to close school again for some reason, or if some students become ill and are quarantined but need to continue their education during that period. We have lots of courses, again, that are being worked on. There are all kinds of questions about how best to do all of these things. And I can guarantee you, we just have teams and teams of people who are working on this, including many, many of our faculty. I'm sure Eric Chicken can vouch for that many of our faculty are really thinking very seriously about how best to teach in the fall and how best to deal with the limitations that we have for this fall that we don't typically have for our faculty. Next slide, please. In spite of the uncertainty caused by the virus, we continue to plan for the enrollment of new students, both in summer and fall. I shared this slide before that shows FSU as a top academic destination. We plan for a smaller freshman class this year than last, as we talked about in the academic affairs committee meeting yesterday. We wanted to have a smaller freshman class coming in. And regardless, we got 64,500 applications, the most we've ever received. And it's an incredible number of young people and students of all age who want to come to Florida State University. John Barnhill and Haga Ferguson in admissions tell me that the deposits are holding steady, and we plan to enroll 2,200 freshmen in the summer. That's in summer session C that the president mentioned, and 4,000 more in the fall. We communicate with all these students all the time about fall semester, and we hope that we don't experience a late melt in our deposits. I don't expect that to happen. I think many, many, many people want to be at Florida State University. Summer orientation starts in a little over a week, and we should have a better idea after that. This is a graph that shows the incredible increase in our graduate applications as well. You'll see point in time, we are doing much better than we were even 2 years ago. And each year gets better. Dean Mark Riley has deployed a marketing team that helps our different departments as they develop materials and communicate campaigns to build the graduate student enrollment that fuels much of our research and teaching. This year for summer enrollment, we experienced tremendous growth. We had over 25,000 students enroll in our summer terms already this year. That's over 60% of our student population. Over 20,000 of those are undergraduates, which is an increase of 17.5%. As with most everything we have, we've been tracking summer enrollment and summer course demand. I created a summer enrollment task force to work with existing groups and new folks in offices to make sure that we had sufficient courses to meet this increased demand and to redirect resources to the areas of highest need. I think we've done a good job of being able to do that and are serving the needs of our students taking summer courses. Many of our students tend to go home over the summer, I should say, and take courses wherever they come from. This year, because all the SUS courses statewide are being offered online, I think many of our students decided to stick with the quality classes that they know FSU is offering and are taking our classes this summer instead of going somewhere else. As the president mentioned, a central figure in all our academic planning has always been Dr. Karen Laughlin. She served as the Dean of Undergraduate Studies. Next slide, please. Thank you. For over 15 years until she passed away very, very unexpectedly. We were working with her on a Sunday, and Monday morning she was found when she didn't report into a Zoom meeting as she always did, right on time. So we miss her very much, and we respect so much of what she has done in her career and her life to make FSU a better university, and particularly for our younger students. Really had everybody's best interest in mind, both academically and otherwise. Happy to have Joe O'Shea. All of you know Joe. He's an amazing, amazing person. Has been serving as an assistant for years. He worked earlier when Karen and I would talk about our upcoming sometime retirements. She always said that she wished that Joe would be able to replace her. And I'm happy that that's worked out. I think she would be very proud and supportive of that. He is exceptional, and many of you know him, so I don't have to talk too much about Joe and the great qualities he brings and experience and student success that he brings to this job. In Karen's honor, I want to share with you some of the students that the president mentioned. We have all kinds of national awards and international awards, 9 student Fulbright awards for the 2nd year in a row. That's really exceptional, and it makes us one of the top Fulbright producers in the country. And it's one of the largest classes. We also featured Jonathan Marcus, the latest FSU student to receive the Hollings Undergraduate Award from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association. No, that's an extraordinary award. This young person, we're very proud of him as well, and all of our other students who won many, many awards. Finally, I want to mention a number of the great things that our faculty are doing. Many of our faculty have been successful in earning top awards as usual and as well. Even in this time, we also have 9 faculty Fulbright awards. The names of these recipients and their academic programs are listed. 3 faculty earned a National Science Foundation Career Grant Awards. That's a pretty extraordinary award. 2 from the College of Engineering and 1 from the College of Social Sciences and Public Policy. The eminent scholar in French, Martin Monroe, won a National Humanities Center Residential Fellowship. A National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship was also earned by Nathan Stein from our philosophy department. And geologist Jeremy Owens was awarded a Sloan Fellowship, Research Fellowship. I'm so proud of all of them and all of our other faculty who continue to really shine in their fields, as well as here at FSU and all the work that they do. These have been really challenging times for everybody, and some days they seem to get worse. But I feel like we are holding together. We are resilient, and you've seen our FSU Knowles Resilience Program. A lot of our students and faculty and staff are going to that and using that resource. And I would suggest it to anybody. And we are using that model and basically selling the model to other institutions who are modifying it to make it focus on their own institution. So I think it's doing a lot of good around a lot of campuses, not just our own. In terms of the academic calendar for next year, we would like to ask you to approve the calendar as planned. I don't have it in front of me, the dates to start in late August. I can't remember, and maybe you have it in front of you. Kim, can you speak? No. Anyway, yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the dates were sent out, I guess, to the board on it.
Yeah.
Maybe on that, some reflection on that about the, I guess, the November Thanksgiving break, and then returning, really not returning, but other really doing that online, which really sounds like, I think, a great plan. and
Yes,
building
sir.
that into the curriculum in the fall.
Yes, sir. That's what we'd like to do. Many universities are doing this, both in the state of Florida and across the nation. We'll start at our regular starting date, which I think may be the 21st. I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's correct, of August, and go through our regular calendar. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
And August 24th, okay. And end on December 11th. We are not asking to change the calendar. We are only asking permission to change the mode of teaching for the 2 weeks following the Thanksgiving break, so that the courses that are being taught face-to-face prior to that time throughout the bulk of the semester will go to be remote or online courses. There will be, as I said, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. The first of those weeks could be used for instruction, for finishing projects, for review, and so on. And then the final week is for exams. We are telling our faculty members who are teaching online and those who will be switching to online for those last 2 weeks to try to make sure that their big course grade is not dependent on a big final exam, but rather that there are multiple ways of assessing students' learning throughout the semester, so that so much pressure doesn't fall on a big final exam. We recognize some students have some difficulty with online test taking, and so we want to make things as go as well as possible for our students to continue their great record of success. So I'm asking for an approval of the regular calendar with the knowledge that we would no longer teach face-to-face after the Thanksgiving holiday. The campus will be open. Students who are working, for example, could come back after the holiday or stay through the holiday. But we would hope that most students who go home for that holiday would choose not to return to campus. Again, as the president said, with our bottom line of trying to keep our campus and our students and faculty and staff as healthy and safe as possible.
Sally, I understand this is the same schedule really for the 12 state universities, and I guess presumably the state colleges as well.
It is not the same for everyone, but many of the state universities have in fact adopted this. Many, and in fact it may be most, but I haven't seen the final drafts of the plans for everybody, are asking students or faculty to finish the last 2 weeks remotely. And I think that will likely be the case. It certainly will be the case here at FAMU. I have been in a lot of contact over the last few weeks with their provost, and Maurice, and he and I are both in agreement about this. Especially important for our College of Engineering students, whom we both serve. And we've been in contact with Tallahassee Community College. Many students take courses there and at FSU or at FAMU. And the reverse is true as well. So we really focused on that. I believe in the end that most of the SUS universities will have only remote classes after Thanksgiving, but I can't say at this point that they have all made that public.
Well, it seems like make a lot of sense. I think the travel and exposure to family and others to bring back to the school, given the conditions and the fall and maybe a reemergence, makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Provost McCrory, and
Thank you.
Chair Henderson. I think this is why I wanted it to be discussed. I think there's a lot of families, a lot of parents who want to know what's going on and why and understand it. I think it's clear that I think it's a smart tactic to invite students who want to come back to campus to be able to come back to campus, but encourage them to stay with their families and stay remotely, and that the professors will adjust their teaching accordingly, and the finals will be done remotely. So is there a motion to approve the academic calendar as proposed, with the understanding that the last 2 weeks will be taught remotely?
Yeah. Well, if I permitted, so move.
Chair Henderson moves. Is there a second?
Second, Chicken.
Trustee Chicken seconds. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Thank you very much, Sally, and thanks for that report.
Thank you, sir.
I know we look forward to our June 18th meeting. We've called a special meeting of the board to review what our plan of reopening is. And we think that meeting, it is such a significant event, deserves a separate meeting. So we'll all reconnect on your proposal, your plan on June 18th, and we look forward to that. And
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, we have our Finance and Business Committee. No, we have Student Affairs Committee. It's hard to follow these notes. Dr. Amy Hecht will present, and Trustee Thiel is the chair of that committee. Trustee Thiel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Burr. And I'd like to reiterate President Thrasher and Jim Henderson's comments about the quality of our team. As we mentioned yesterday, it seems that each time we get together, there's new challenges that the team, handles so deftly. And also, I think in this case, had the foresight and the will to take action. As we've been talking about the professional know, the badging, as you think about what these kids are going through and the uncertainty and the lackluster at best job prospects for kids graduating, I just want to applaud Amy, you and your team for building out more ways for kids to build skills that will help them deal with the uncertainties, but prepare themselves better for the workforce. And it's just a great example of sort of filling in to make sure that our kids have all they need to succeed. So I want to thank you and congratulate you. And we look forward to your report. So I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. And as President Thrasher mentioned in his comments, we've been working closely with our students on the unrest in Tallahassee and response to George Floyd's murder. And that has taken up quite a bit of time, and I think will continue to. And an additional challenge, of course, is that we are all virtual as we try to bring people together and have dialogue and move forward. So, so far we are doing well, and Jonathan Levin and his team, and I'm sure Tazzy will discuss that during her report, they too have been working really hard to be the voice of students. I do want to highlight virtual FSU. During the final spring months and summer, we have turned to create a Florida State experience completely virtual, from chapter and advisor trainings, connection points, teaching workshops, fitness classes, mental health counseling sessions, and telehealth. We've moved entirely online to be able to serve our students in this kind of virtual world. And it's received a lot of national attention, and many other institutions are looking to model the way. And I just want to thank Dr. Danielle Acosta, who has really helped spearhead this initiative and get it off the ground for the division. And then everyone in student affairs who has really turned on a dime, just like our faculty, to transition what we do into a virtual world. And finally, we saw an excellent presentation, as Trustee Thiel mentioned, on financial literacy and our badging system. And this is just one way for our students to get an additional edge. We discussed in depth the personal finance elements that our students need and are craving, and ways in which we can expand that much broader so that all of our graduates have a sense of financial literacy and comfort when they graduate from Florida State. But I am happy to take any questions you might have. And if not, that is it for me.
Questions for Amy? All right. Thank you very much, Chairman Burr. Kyle, he might be up. There he is.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. And thank you, Chair Thiel. We'll move with Finance and Business Committee. Kyle Clark, a Vice President for Finance and Administration, and Bob Sasser chairs that committee. Trustee Sasser. Trustee Sasser, are you with us? Are you on mute? Kyle, you want to?
I can go ahead and get started. So yesterday, the Finance and Business Committee had the opportunity to meet and review the operating budget. I, like the president, want to thank all of our faculty, staff, and administration for all of their hard work that they have put into the operating budget. As I'll show you in just a few minutes, our operating budget really is a project that lasts for more than 6 months and involves hundreds of folks around campus. I'd also like to thank the Board of Trustees for all of the time that they invested in reviewing the operating budget and asking questions, not just today and yesterday, but the time that they spent before, and especially to the Finance Committee for their involvement in helping to guide the development of the next year's operating budget. The COVID-19 pandemic has created challenging times, certainly in the world of budget and finance, along with the rest of the university. As of today, the president mentioned this as well, the appropriations bill for next year has not yet been presented to the governor. So we're not sure what actions that he might take related to next year's operating budget. And until we have classes again on campus in the fall, it's difficult to predict some of the impacts that we may have on some of our different revenue streams. That being said, due to the uncertainties, the budget that we're presenting to you today has a certain amount of assumptions associated with it and impacts that we're anticipating as well. I'm going to go over those with you. We have those laid out in a slide for you today. Overall, we're projecting a $1.9 billion budget. The budget is down around $50 million or 3% from where we were last year. And as I'll discuss, we did see some new revenue in education and general funds in our restricted group and our component group. We have some decreases and some offsets in our carry forward budgets and also in our capital projects spending. So the first thing that I want to discuss, and I apologize for those of you that had the chance to sit in on our meeting yesterday, some of this will be repeat information for you. But the first thing I want to discuss is just our timeline for our operating budget. This project starts every year in January or before, where we work with campus on their operating budget to make requests and to start their preparations. You can see the timeline that we have laid out, but there are milestones each and every month. And this is a significant milestone today with our Board of Trustees hopefully approving our operating budget that then ultimately would be presented to their Board of Governors, who we hope will approve that in August at their meeting. Every year we like to start off with just a reminder of the different fund groups. We do use fund accounting at the institution, which I know is a little bit different than what some of you all use in your daily lives. But for our funds, we have education and general funds, which are funds that are appropriated by the state legislature. We have designated funds that are funds that we generate locally on campus. We have auxiliary funds that are for activities that are predominantly outside the core mission of the university. We have restricted funds, which are funds that are restricted by an agency or donor for a specific purpose. Our capital projects for the construction and renovation projects that we anticipated. You'll also note that in your board packet, there was a new BOG schedule related to capital budgeting, and then the component unit section, which includes direct support organizations. And we've also, again, included this year in the services that we share amongst all of our DSOs with the university that was in your board packet. In terms of the assumptions, we did see a significant decrease in carry forward spending. President Thrasher and I sent out multiple messages to campus, which really started back in March, letting them know that they needed to delay significant expenditures wherever possible. We appreciate deans and department heads heeding us on that advice. That really continues into the next fiscal year as well until we see the long-term implications of this pandemic. And so our departments did budget a significant less in carry forward as opposed to last year. Capital projects were decreased. I think when we talked about the stress tests back in March and what we could face, we talked about $40 million being down in capital projects. It's down much less than that, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. Most of the other projected spending has remained constant. We do see big changes in our expense budget in terms of a lot of expenses being reduced or eliminated this year. There are no changes to tuition and fees. There is no increase, again, for I think the 6th or 7th year. Our enrollment projections are expected to be comparable to fall of 2018. As the provost mentioned, we do see significant increases right now in our summer school budget. We're up around 18%, I think, in headcount, and I think around 2,200 as it relates to semester credit hours. New education general funds have been budgeted that the legislature allocated. We have not allocated out on the expense side for strategic initiatives. We've only budgeted the revenue. FSU receives more National Science Foundation funding than any other university. Our auxiliary expenses are budgeted similar to previous fiscal years. Of course, our faculty members attract significant research dollars, and our almost 42,000 students, including more than 9,000 graduate and professional students, come from across the nation and world. This slide shows you the $1.8 billion operating budget that we're proposing for next year. You can see the changes in each one of the various categories, and I'm going to go through the significant changes now in each group for you. This is a pie chart that shows you our categories of revenue and shows you a breakout that we receive about 30% of our operating budget from state support. Our students pay in around 11.75 in terms of tuition and fees. The restricted fund group is the second largest fund group at 25%, followed by auxiliaries at almost 14%, and then our capital projects. Overall, significant changes to our expense budget. I mentioned this earlier, but around a 3% decrease, or roughly $50 million. We did see a decrease in general funds. That's predominantly because of reductions in carry forward funding that I'll talk about. We saw increases in designated, auxiliary, restricted, and then major changes in the capital projects area as departments really are delaying renovation projects. You'll recall last year too, we had two major capital projects with the Earth, Ocean, Atmospheric Science and the Student Union project, both going on at the same time. So part of that change is attributable to that. And then we see a modest increase in our component units. In terms of new funding that the university received during the last legislative session, I know you all have seen this slide and we've talked about it a number of times, but just a reminder, there's around $47 million that was allocated to Florida State University. About $27 million of that is for operations, 26 million of it for the university, 542,000 for the College of Medicine, and 23,000 for the College of Engineering. National ranking was $15 million. The Institute for Child Welfare was $5 million. Tuition adjustments, we have more students who are enrolled in fundable classes versus non-fundable classes that we're anticipating in the fall, which is about a $4.6 million increase. Again, no tuition or fee increases in this budget. Health insurance adjustments based on the state's actuarials, and then the Florida Institute of Politics received $1 million. Although we did receive new funding in our education general fund area, we do overall have a decrease in that fund group. That's because there are substantial decreases planned and carry forward spending in our E&G fund group. Almost $50 million less departments are anticipating in carry forward funds for the upcoming fiscal year than they were the previous fiscal year. I know that we've discussed this in the past as well, but the university operates on a biweekly payroll system too. And due to the calendar system, there was one less pay period this fiscal year than there were in the last fiscal year, which also made an impact in terms of our salary expenses. In terms of the designated fund group, we have about a 7% or $5 million increase in that. That's in a large part due to the technology fee allocations were postponed this year and will be made next year. They set up a special competition related to online learning and quality improvement measures that they're hoping to allocate a significant portion of the technology fee to. It also includes a transfer out for the union construction for capital projects. In terms of auxiliary funds, no real significant changes. There was a slight increase in some non-salary categories for athletics, and there were some decreases in some of those categories due to athletics as well. Overall, it's less than a $6 million change in our auxiliary budget. In terms of the restricted fund, we do see the restricted funds going up by around $22 million. And I will tell you the categories for that. We are up around $5 million in federal grants, $13 million in state grants, and around 2.7 in research overhead transfers. We are up in terms of our increase in BRAT Futures. BRAT Futures is up by almost $12 million compared to where we were in the current fiscal year. I mentioned construction several times during the budget presentation. This chart outlines what our construction budget is planned for next year. You'll see the student union project is $66 million. The biomedical research facility that's being renovated for additional faculty and lab space is around $12 million. The FSU STEAM building at Florida High is around $12 million. Yesterday in audit and in finance, we both mentioned the Earth, Ocean, Atmospheric Science building closeout. There's $11 million there as we work through the punch list and work through the FF&E. The Hoffman Teaching Lab renovations, again, that's for faculty offices and faculty labs, is around $9 million. The Center for Advanced Propulsion is around $6 million that's out at Innovation Park. And the all others, those are projects that are renovation projects that are minor campus projects being done around campus, and they're all under $2 million bucks. In terms of the biomedical research facility and the Hoffman Teaching Lab, both of those projects are expected to be completed this calendar year. Again, it's a 38% decrease in capital projects, or $91 million. And this is due in a large part to a substantial decrease in carry forward spending on capital projects, and also not having completed the EOAS building. I'll just mention too, on the capital projects, remember that the BOG's new capital budgeting schedule is in your board packet as well. The component units for our DSOs is provided on slide 16. This shows you all of our DSOs. Some of these boards have not met to approve their budgets. We've used the estimate that they provided, and if their board changes it and it's not material, we'll go in and make that change before we send this to the Board of Governors. I know one of the groups has a board meeting today to approve this. Overall, it's $106 million component budget proposal for the next fiscal year. And again, the schedule for the component unit shared services is included in your board packet. In terms of our budget relative to the rest of the SUS, when you take out teaching hospitals and component units, the university's budget is around $1.6 million. which puts us slightly behind the University of Florida, South Florida, and Central Florida. Undergraduate tuition, you'll see on our undergraduate tuition, there are no changes. It again is $6,506. For a resident student, it's $21,673 for a non-resident student. And this hasn't changed in the past 6 or 7 years. With that, Chairman, I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has related to the operating budget.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Chairman Thiel, I think, or Committee Chairman Thiel, I think you are with us now. Do you have any comments before we move approval for the operating budget?
Chairman Burr, this is Bob Sasser. I'd just like to say just a couple words about my admiration, respect, and appreciation for Kyle and his team and all they've done in the development of this budget. As you all know, it's a detailed process, and in spite of all the financial uncertainties related to the pandemic, really uncertainty like we've seen never before. And while working remotely, the university community and Kyle and his team once again came together to develop an operating budget as required by our laws and our regulations and guidance provided by the Board of Governors. They did a terrific job, and I really appreciate that. The committee and I work very closely with Kyle, as always, reviewing the budget. Our questions have been answered, and Kyle has communicated with other trustees regarding the budget questions as they reviewed the material. And I'll just add that the goal of our budget here is to support the mission of our university. We want to support our mission in continuing our upward mobility and to climb in the U.S. News and World Report rankings, the Board of Governors performance metrics, and the preeminence metrics. We intend to move up and not down. After our review yesterday, the committee recommends approval of the budget. Thank you.
Trustee Sasser, can I take that as a motion to approve?
I would make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Trustee Alvarez seconded. Why don't we open up any questions or discussion on approval of this item? I know we had most of us all sat in on the committee meeting yesterday and got a thorough review of this, and I had several questions answered at that point. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. That motion passes. The budget is now approved, and we understand it's a sort of continuation budget and may be subject to bringing the board back together. Depends upon what happens with the governor's final decisions and then what happens with the campus going forward. But moving on, Kyle.
I have a question for Carolyn, Chairman Burr. I'm just trying to clarify, do we have to have 5 motions or is one sufficient, Carolyn?
5, please. That way, if anything has to be modified later, they stand alone.
Yeah, Kyle, I think they're each individual motions.
Okay.
Approve number 1.
We approve number 1.
Right.
So the next motion would be to approve the university's fiscal year 2020-2021 Florida Medical Practice Plan operating budget of just over $10 million.
So moved. Peel.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved.
The third item is to approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 direct support organization operating budgets totaling $96.7 million.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Ballard.
That was Ballard. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. That motion's approved.
The fourth motion is to grant the approval to President Thrasher to make any subsequent changes to the budget and capital projects within the available resources as prescribed by the laws and rules of the state of Florida.
So move.
We have a motion by Alvarez. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mateer.
Mateer, second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And
Opposed,
the
like
last
sign. Motion carries.
And the last motion related to the budget is to continue the existing tuition and fee regulation at the current rates for fiscal year 2020-2021 and approve an amendment of the current regulation to that effect.
Motion by Gonzalez.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Assembler.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
The next item to discuss is the 2021-2022 fixed capital outlay budget request. This is what we will be working with the Board of Governors in terms of PICO projects for the next 5 years. As you know, we bring this to the board every year to update them and to request their approval. And then this is the information that is shared with the Board of Governors. They will review this information in light of the university's facilities needs and a set of criteria that they have developed. And then they'll hear key projects that meet their guidelines. The #1 rated project next year that we're going to be asking for funds for from the legislature is the Interdisciplinary Research and Commercialization Building. You'll see that at the top. The College of Business Building and the STEM Teaching Lab are the 3 highest priorities. Then we have a section related to capital renewal, stewardship of existing facilities. The Kellogg Research Building remodeling project next to criminology is the highest rated category, highest rated project within that section. And then finally, for new facility requests, you'll see the Veterans Legacy Complex, followed by the FAMU FSU College of Engineering building. The most substantial change to this schedule from the last fiscal year relates to the College of Business building. This schedule does reflect the $20 million appropriation that the legislature did provide. At this point in time, we have around $35 million from the state in terms of funds available for that project, and this schedule reflects a $10 million request. If the institution received that $10 million, that would complete the state match for that building. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the capital improvement plan.
Any questions for Kyle? If not, is there a motion to approve the fixed capital outlay budget?
So moved. Trustee Assembler.
Is there a second?
Ballard, second.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Kyle. And thank you, Trustee Sasser, for that presentation. Next, we'll have our Audit and Compliance Committee chaired by Trustee Gonzalez and a report from Sam McCall, the Chief Audit Officer. Trustee Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit and Compliance Committee met yesterday, and all committee members were present. We met via Zoom. The committee had a relatively light agenda. Among the items on the agenda was the review and approval of a new audit contract for the Athletics Department and Athletics Association with James Moore and Company. The item was included in the consent part of the agenda this morning and approved by the trustees. The committee also reviewed and reaffirmed the committee's charter, which is a good routine governance practice. Ms. Robin Blank, the university's Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer, gave the committee a status update of the activities in her office. And Sam McCall, the university's Chief Audit Officer, and his staff gave the committee a status update of the progress of ongoing audits and other activities in his office. I'd like to ask Robin if she has any additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to remind all of our trustees that your Commission on Ethics Form 1s are out and they are due on July 1. We'll be keeping an eye on our progress as a university, and we'll send reminders if we have anyone who is coming up on that date. But thank you all for everything. Thank you to our chairman and to Dr. McCall for their support always.
Great, thank you, Robin. Sam, do you have any additional comments?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make just a couple of comments. I'd like to make the Board of Trustees aware of audits that have been issued since our last April meeting. We issued an audit on the College of Law, the graduate student tuition waivers, and the College of Medicine. We also issued an audit on our 6-month follow-up, which is a process we follow. When we conduct an audit, we meet with management, we develop an action plan, we follow up on all those outstanding audits every 6 months until those issues have been adequately addressed. So we issue 2 of those each year. We've issued 1 of those since last April. Some current audits that we're working on, and I think they're all significant audits, working on the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory audit. We're working on admissions acceptance. We're looking at some cybersecurity areas. We're looking at Seminole Boosters, Athletics Financial, and the FSU FAMU College of Engineering. We're making good progress on the College of Engineering audit with FAMU's people. The last 2 things I'd like to mention briefly is that not the June meeting, but in the fall meeting, we always come back to the Board of Trustees and ask if there are additional areas that you would like for us to audit. So I would ask you to please be thinking about that. I'll send a letter out to each Board of Trustee member. I meet with President Thrasher and Kyle and the Chief of Staff, Liz, and talk about audits that we should be conducting going forward. So think about any audits you'd like for us to address in the 2021 year. The last thing I'd like to mention is it relates to the CARES Act, with that money being distributed relating to Higher Education Relief Act and CARES. I would expect the university will be receiving and spending some of that money. I was on a webinar yesterday afternoon for 2 hours with federal inspectors general and a lot of large nonprofits around the nation. And then it's been my experience with federal funds received that they give us the money, they tell us to spend it, and then as we spend the money, the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, they keep making up the rules as to how we should account for that money. So I feel comfortable that the university has good systems of internal control for those monies we receive every day and the money we receive under CARES. But there may be some special things that come about as a result of CARES that if we can assist the university in any way with our internal controls, we'll be happy to do that. I think the main thing we need to think about is we need to document every dollar we receive and every dollar we spend. So documentation will be important. I fully expect the Auditor General to come in and look at how we've accounted for the CARES Act monies. I prefer to work with management prior to the Auditor General coming in so that when they do identify an issue, it's a small issue as opposed to a large issue. So I think that's the big thing that keeps me up at night right now is that's how we're going to be held to accountability issues relating to CARES down the road. A lot of monies like this, the rules are made up as we go along, but the perfection is expected at the end of the process. So with that, thank you, Chairman.
Great, thank you, Sam. I want to reassure the trustees that both Robin and Sam are the consummate professionals, and despite the disruptions and challenges that we've been facing over the last 3 months, they really haven't skipped a beat in keeping the university in compliance. So thank you, Sam and Robin. And with that, that concludes our presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez. And Sam, I don't want you staying up at night because I know you have a great team and a great staff. And congratulations on your technology improvement in 24 hours. That's been a much better process than that thing. But I know we're in good hands, and I know you and Robin are both very diligent in what you do, and we appreciate it.
Well, I'm at the office today where I like to be. And thank you.
Just keep your distance. I'm going to move the agenda, take privilege and move the agenda around a little bit. I'm going to delay the athletics update, and so we'll move forward with our legislative update. And we have Kathleen Daly, our Associate Vice President for University Relations. Kathleen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the board. I have a brief report for you this morning, as there are some things that are still not quite definitive yet, but we have reason to believe, very good reason to believe, that the governor will receive the state budget maybe late next week. When he does receive that, he will have 15 days to act. He doesn't have to take the full 15. but he has to have it done by June 30th. Legislative leaders continue to monitor the state revenue outlook, and there have been things reported in the last couple of weeks that I'm sure most of you have seen. The outlooks for April and May don't look all that great. However, I think that in the long run, I think that there's some positive things that the legislative leaders are looking at. Number one, I'll just remind you, I think I reported on this right after session ended, but that seems like quite a million years ago now. The legislature did budget within the new budget coming effective on July 1, $52.5 million for in response to the coronavirus epidemic in conjunction with some federal funds. There's $300 million set aside that can be tapped for emergency response. And there's a $3 billion emergency fund also in the budget. So there's some money there, along with the $4.6 billion to the state in CARES Act, the federal money that the leaders are now working on getting some clarity on how that may be spent toward the budget crisis. There is going to be another revenue estimating conference, which will be the official one, on June 25th. That's 5 days before the end of this fiscal year. That will show revenue collection report for May with sales tax activities from April, which I think most of us have already kind of seen. There was, in the April numbers, I'll just point out that there was some voluntary deferral of a couple of different taxes that were not paid out, which adds to the bottom line of the whole. The corporate income tax, the highway safety fee, the corporate filing fee. Those fees will be recaptured at a later time. So that's also something that is somewhat positive to look toward. So we'll keep an eye on that and continue to report on that as we go along. I also had a conversation with the governor's staff earlier this week about some legislation that we tracked during session, the Name, Image, Likeness Athletics Bill and the Higher Education Act, Senate Bill 72. The governor is being briefed on those pieces of legislation this week, and I suspect he'll get those next week and probably sign those into law. Otherwise, he received 21 new bills today. He's got about 100 more to go. He'll have all those wrapped up by the end of this month. I wanted to let you all know that we are monitoring the elections for the fall, as we always do, and the qualifying deadline will be next Friday, June 12th at noon. After that, I'll send around a report that will outline some of the FSU alum who are running in various seats, and I'll send that all to you just for your interest. And then finally, we are working on posting our final legislator, and that will come after all the bills have been signed and chapters have been assigned, and the governor has acted on the budget. And so I suspect that will be posted in early July. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Kathleen. Any questions for Kathleen? That's a great update with given the limited information available right now, but thank you for that. Any questions for Kathleen? Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to student government. And we have Ms. Natasha Anvier. I'm going to give it a shot. Natasha, this is your first time with us, and I hope I didn't mess that up, but you're the Vice President for Student Government Association.
Yes, Nastasia Janvier, thank you for giving it your best effort. It wasn't too bad, but Nastasia Janvier. In regards to the PowerPoint that we have pulled up, I'm going to try to share my screen to share this with you all. Okay, it's giving me a little bit of trouble.
I can assure you that I won't be able to help you. That's a good job.
Okay, perfect.
Ozzy, I was able to get mine up.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Just
you.
tell me when you want to advance.
Okay, sounds good. So hello everyone. Good morning. Nice to see you all. I am here to present on behalf of the Student Government Association, and we are really excited to share with you all what we have going on. Next screen. So I'm here to present our new administration. You guys have already had an opportunity to meet Mr. Jonathan Levin and myself, Nastasia Jambier, Christian Hall, who serves as the treasurer. And we are very excited to be serving the student body, but also be updating you all on what the student body has going on, especially within the association, our RSOs, and moving forward. These are the points that we are focusing on this academic year, the points that we ran on and got elected on, and things that we are passionate about. So as you see on point one, really emphasizing advancing student life for every single student here on campus, and some of these points fall under those things. The second point is amplifying diverse student voices, and some of those things that fall under that is increasing funding for first generation students, conceiving a student advocate program, and also providing continuous support for students, veterans, and military affiliated students. The third point that we are emphasizing is enhancing SGA internally and creating a established calendar for everyone to be able to cohesively follow along with what's going on within the association, and also increasing support for RSOs so they are aware of different funding processes and that measures. Next slide. Okay, the fourth point that we have is expanding external relations. As we know, Panama City's campus and continuing work with their SGA and supporting their students. The next thing that we have in there is the relationships with elected officials. As you know, those are really important, and we as students want to continue building those relationships. And then furthermore, strengthening our relationships with FAMU, and recognizing the importance of that, and also with TCC. After that, we have furthering the FSU strategic plan, expanding diversity and inclusion programming, generating a undergraduate student mentorship program, and also increasing professional development for our students as they are graduating and entering into the workforce. And the last point we have is increasing student engagement across campus. And obviously that looks a little different now due to the current circumstances, but realizing with virtual FSU, some of the opportunities that we have with Zoom and also sort of social media platforms is going to be a really big focus as we transition, obviously full in effect with the summer, but into the fall semester also. Next slide. And I am so happy to introduce to you all our executive branch cabinet and also Office of Presidents. These are just some of the faces. These are the faces that we will be working with, and you guys will hopefully have an opportunity to see them here and there at the Board of Trustees meetings as they listen in on important information. And they're exceptional students, and we're really excited to work with them. And this slide is the slide of our executive cabinet, who will be working also in tandem with us in regards to making our platform point come into fruition. Once again, exceptional students that we have at FSU, and really eager and ready to engage with students in regards to what their needs are and how our platform point will come into fruition. So this is kind of a just overview of how the executive branch is outlined. In case you wanted to know any more information about that, there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of different places. And we just wanted to acknowledge that and recognize that even within the executive branch, as we transition with leadership, we're always constantly fulfilling different spaces and continuously interviewing people for those different spaces that are open. Next slide. So to shed light to our agencies, which we have an opportunity to work with, Asian American Student Union is hosting a virtual sessions with Pit Stop Perspectives, and they'll be working on that throughout the summer and really engaging students on that level. The Women's Student Union had the opportunity to do till Tuesday by promoting a campaign to have people wear teal on Tuesday and post it on social media to engage and let people know that they are allies, and also recognizing the conversation around sexual assault and sexual violence. And after that, we have the Pride Student Union, and this is the new director for Pride. She is working on virtual programming and also connecting with the Pride community in regards to supporting their students throughout the summer and also the upcoming year. Next slide. And the Black Student Union is right now all hands on deck with advocacy efforts. Devaldrick Ponder, he is the current director, and he is working very hard. The Veteran Student Union has established a really cool campaign via social media by teaching different people on social media platforms about different exercising techniques that they can engage with at home, and also just keeping active during this time. And our Hispanic Latinx Student Union, Aldi, is the current director, and she is also working on virtual programming. Virtual FSU, we're expanding this throughout the campus, and on our end too with Student Government Association, we're able to have a bill signing viewed for students via Zoom and launch that on our social media platform so that they can see exactly what's going on into the campaigns that we have going on, and also just be engaged on that measure. And also we have town halls happening so students can ask questions about what they might not know, what they want to know more about, and the current state that we are in. This summer, we'll be engaging with orientation and the new students coming in. So June 10th through July 27th will be the Ignite Your Know sessions, which agency leaders and different leaders across campus will have the opportunity to engage with those new students, let them know why we love FSU so much and what they have an opportunity to engage with FSU as current students or going to be current students. So this is something that we're very excited about, and it's happening Monday through Thursday, 5:30 to 6:30, and this is going to be a really cool way for students to engage throughout the summer with our new students coming in. And advocacy, our advocacy efforts continue to be a priority within the association. As we all know, with the current circumstances happening nationally and locally, this is something that has been at the forefront of everything that we're doing, especially during this time. I want to really shout out our agency groups, the Black Student Union, Pride Student Union, who have taken all hands on deck with this, and also our administration, who have diligently been working with our administration in regards to creating a tangible action plans on moving forward. And we are really excited that FSU is going to continue to be at the forefront of these conversations in representing our students from all across different lived experiences and communities and backgrounds. So with that being said, we took a space in our Senate meeting last night to encourage people to speak out against injustices, and also a call to action to serve in any capacity that they can. And I extend that same sentiment to you all with our privilege and platforms that we hold in our respective areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Janvier, and congratulations to you and Jonathan on your election as president and vice president of our Student Government Association, that ambitious platform. I know our whole student body and FSU family will be better served and will be better off after your term. And especially the efforts during the orientation this summer. I know that's been a tough time to do that, but getting our new students acclimated. And certainly thank you for your advocacy for the stand against racism. And we appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Janvier?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question. I just have a comment to let everybody know that Jonathan and Tazzy, and that's how she's known by, have been incredible leaders already in this effort to bring justice and to understand the concerns. And I appreciate it personally. I appreciate their leadership and look forward to continuing to work with them very closely as we move ahead on some of the issues and the conversations that we plan to have and the action that we will take as a result of those conversations. So, Jonathan, thank you. Tazzy, thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, President Thrasher. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll go to our Faculty Senate Steering Committee update. Dr. Aaron Ryan is the Vice Chair. And Dr. Ryan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see all of you, if virtually. Thank you for the opportunity. I don't have an excellent PowerPoint, but I do want to give this 3-minute summary on what the Faculty Senate and the faculty have been doing since we last reported to you back in February. The Senate has met 4 times, including an emergency meeting in late April to finish some important business that extended beyond our usual calendar, mostly because we were still perfecting the art of 100-member parliamentary process deliberations over Zoom. But we made good progress and we were able to get some good things done. The Senate doesn't meet over the summer, but the steering committee continues to meet weekly to respond to the challenges of the COVID-19 crisis and to prepare for next year, in association with both the administration and the State University System Advisory Council of Faculty Senates. In that capacity, as you can imagine, we've spent a good deal of time these last 4 months deliberating the unavoidable policy changes raised by the pandemic, including policies pertaining to grading, remote instruction, remote exams, faculty evaluations, tenure and promotion, research, travel, faculty evaluations, all the health and safety implications of the spring closure and the fall reopening. And as you doubtlessly know, many faculty fall into higher risk demographics with regard to virus transmission. And many are worried about the implications of funding shortfalls. So we all appreciate how carefully you all are taking decisions about the reopening with regard to these issues. Let me give you a very quick summary of our formal actions since my last report. In February, at our last in-person Senate meeting, we continued to debate proposed Phase 3 revisions to the FSU Constitution that would modify which faculty members can serve in the Senate. We had expected to be able to bring a consensus-based proposal to a vote this year, but of course, much of our attention was later redirected by the pandemic. In March, we nevertheless managed to approve some proposed changes to the liberal studies program, eliminating an E-Series requirement and liberalizing elective choices. The Senate also voted to modify the undergraduate retention policy to address problems in its implementation to transfer students. In April, we amended a conflicts of interest policy for graduate committees and formalized distinctions between thesis, coursework only, and project-based master's programs. We modified the grade appeals policy and we passed a resolution affirming support for faculty review that would fairly honor presentations and performances canceled due to the coronavirus. In light of pandemic closures, we also voted to temporarily suspend the requirement of the GRE and the GMAT for master's and specialists graduate admissions. In an emergency session, we updated the university ADA syllabus statement and began discussing faculty concerns about the implementation of certain ADA accommodations policies. These policies may become even more important with the COVID-19 crisis. We've since convened an ad hoc committee to identify opportunities for better faculty coordination with the Office of Accessibility Services in working together to meet student needs and university obligations under the law. Finally, this spring, we conducted our first Faculty Senate orientation session, which we did remotely over Zoom, to better prepare new senators for their roles in faculty governance. Participation was strong, even among previously serving senators, indicating the seriousness with which our members take our responsibilities within shared governance. And one of the themes of the orientation was how proud we are of the strong role that faculty play in university governance here at FSU, and how much we value the collaborative partnership we've shared with the administration this year, valuing it now more than ever. So to sum up, despite the unavoidable anxiety that many faculty are feeling in the face of these uncertain times, we're heartened and grateful to be part of a university community that values faculty input and honors collaborative decision. And the steering committee continues to work with our president, provost, and the entire FSU administrative team to advance our shared academic mission and to support our entire community during these difficult days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan, and thank you for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions? I think everyone, there are a couple of technical gaps in your presentation, but I think everyone got the gist of it. But I want to be sure if anyone has any questions, you have a chance to ask Dr. Ryan. Doesn't sound like any. I think we did get it all through, and I appreciate that, and thank you for your service and helping lead the steering committee going forward. And so next we'll hear from Dr. Jennings, Vice President of University Advancement. Dr. Jennings, I want to second the comments made by President Thrasher earlier. I think you've joined the administration almost the same time that I joined the board at FSU, and I've seen the great work you have done over the last 10 years. I've also seen how you captured the heart of Dawn Jennings, which was a vital personal part of our administration. And we will miss you and her both, but certainly wish you well in your next adventure at Washington Lee. So Dr. Jennings, you're recognized.
Chairman Burr, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure and a privilege these past 10 years. I think this might be about my 35th Board of Trustees meeting along with you and many others, and it's been a privilege. As you might expect, as some of the emails and text messages and social media posts have come in congratulating me, people are a little miffed that I'm taking Dawn with me. So some people are going to miss me, but they're really going to miss Dawn, and I get it. So I want to give a brief update here. First off, one of the things I'm going to miss is sometimes in September and October at about 7:45 in the morning, the moon actually sets over the Westcott building. And I took this photo a couple of years ago. So the beauty of this campus, we're the great beneficiaries of that, and I've always appreciated that as well. I want to give a brief update on some of the direct support organizations, and then what we can expect from fundraising in the times ahead, and then a report on where FSU is with its fundraising this year. First off, to piggyback on some of the comments made about the terrible incidents in Minneapolis, just the most recent example of racism in this country, the Alumni Association reached out to our Black Alumni Network leaders, and I want to thank our Black Alumni Network leaders, Chair Shari Williams and Ali Moore, for helping shape a message for the Alumni Association, shape a plan, and working with other Black alumni leaders on the board for the Alumni Association, as well as current and past leaders of the Black Alumni Network. This coming Wednesday, June 10th, Alumni Association is planning, as part of its Webinar Wednesday series, a forum to discuss the issues that have been raised recently in America by the death of George Floyd. So that is something to look forward to, and we'll send out emails about that shortly. The Alumni Association also has several other networks based on different constituencies of alumni. And we're all Florida State alumni are FSU alumni, of course, but many people identify with the activities that they took part in as students or with various organizations as alumni afterwards. And I just wanted to make you aware of some of the other networks in addition to the Black Alumni Network, which is the oldest of these networks. And as a result of that, also the Black Alumni Network has a specified seat on the Alumni Board's National Board of Directors, in addition to a number of other Black alumni who now serve on that board. The other networks include the Hispanic Latinx Network, which was approved in February 2020 by the Alumni Board, Asian American Network, the Young Alumni Network, the Emeritus Alumni Network, which are people who graduated 50 years ago or more, the Student Veterans Alumni Network, not Student Veterans, the Veterans Alumni Network, and one that's pending the Alumni Association Board's approval, the Pride Network for LGBTQ alumni who want to associate through that alumni networks. This is in addition to, of course, the Seminole clubs around the country and other programming that the Alumni Association does to try to reach people in ways that are meaningful to them as alumni. I mentioned the webinar Wednesdays. This has been one of the ways that the Alumni Association has pivoted away from in-person events to online events, as we all have. And some of the programs have been really fantastic, including folks from the Career Center to help promote our alumni getting or offering student internships or student jobs to our students. Marshall Shepard, who is a nationally known climate scientist, meteorologist, to talk about the climate and hurricanes upcoming. Loretta Jackson Brown, who is a chief communications officer at the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. A number of wellness programs about how to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and staying at home and dealing with stress and mental routines and health. And John Crossman, who did a great program on relationship development, which was well received. So that's just one example. I hope you'll keep your eyes open for some of those webinar Wednesdays and participate in those as those come available. The FSU Foundation Board met recently, and they are in the final phases of the strategic planning process that revolves really around 4 main goals. You'll be pleased to know that the first goal of the FSU Foundation strategic plan is to increase revenue from both gifts and investments. So we're keeping our eye on the ball there. The second goal is to increase our engagement of donors and volunteers in new ways. Third goal is going to be to continue to enhance the culture of philanthropy at Florida State University. And the fourth goal really is integrated in all the other ones, but it's to continue to advance technology across all of our different areas of fundraising, recognizing not just in the pandemic, but going forward that technology is going to play an increasing role in how we're going to reach our alumni, donors, friends, non-alumni parents, and others who support Florida State. The FSU Foundation Board of Trustees also has increased its philanthropic giving minimums to $10,000 a year annually, plus a 6-figure commitment either prior to or during the time of their board service on the FSU Foundation. And recognizing its role in philanthropy at FSU, the group wanted to make sure it was being a leader in that area too. The Real Estate Foundation under Kevin Graham received its first donation of commercial property recently. That was exciting, and that was a big team effort between the Real Estate Foundation and the FSU Foundation. Also providing background support for discussions about Champions Hall. And then next I want to just go through some predictions of what we might expect for philanthropy in the next year anyway. We have a consulting relationship with EAB, a consulting firm out of Washington, DC, and they pulled over 110 of our advancement, leading advancement colleagues at universities around the country. And 4 main themes emerged from those survey instruments that they put out. One consequence of COVID-19, philanthropic revenues are likely to accelerate next year. And part of that are people looking at the level of cultivation and visits that are occurring now, and some of that's decreased, and that will have decreases going forward. There's also a lot of volatility in the market, and as you know, the gifts at the top of the gift pyramid from our wealthiest alumni tend to follow their appreciated assets value and their level of confidence in the economy. And so as people are concerned about where the economy is going next year, so development officers are concerned about where those gifts are going to come from. Next slide. The second area is small and mid-sized gifts will fall across all institutions in next fiscal year, and top of the gift pyramid, which I mentioned a moment ago. Next slide is, while we expect visits to rebound next year while the country continues to open up, we're going to continue the cultivation drop-off we've seen this year will have its effect next year. Next slide. And then finally, some institutions are entering campaigns, others are about to launch major milestones. The ones that are about to launch new campaigns are continuing with that, mostly on the theory that if they have a 5 to 8 year campaign window, that by the end of that time, the economy will have come back and we'll be back in a good position. However, those that are talking about doing public launches and setting goals or wrapping up campaigns, many of those are postponing those events until more is known. At Florida State, we're of course in the midst of a major campaign in Seminole Boosters with the Unconquered campaign, which is on great guns. And I think David Coburn may talk about that. And we've focused the foundation's fundraising efforts recently on student success, both for the CARE program and more recently for the student emergency funds. And thanks for some of you who participated in that effort. We've received over $500,000 for student emergency funds, all of which have been distributed to students in need to help them take care of their expenses so they can stay in school and stay on track for graduation. And then most recently, the last 2 weeks, we've been focusing on trying to raise money for employees who are suffering financial consequences of the pandemic, and to make sure that they're able to meet their families' needs and to continue to work at Florida State. So those are 2 areas for those on the board who are wanting to make an immediate impact now. Our students continue to have needs beyond what the CARES Act funding will give us, and some of our employees have significant financial needs as well, and I'll be happy to provide the web links after the meeting for those who would like to participate in that. Finally, I want to wrap up on the slides with, next slide. This is one you've seen a number of times before at board meetings. Compared to last year, at the same time, we had about 123.7 million this time last year. That was largely due to a couple of really significant gifts at Seminole Boosters. And so the FSU Foundation this time last year had received $48 million. So we're almost consistent with last year. The Alumni Association is actually a little ahead of last year by $100,000 of revenue. And the Research Foundation is slightly ahead this year. Ringling is slightly ahead, or sorry, just slightly behind last year. So while we're down 17% overall, that really is a result of 3 or 4 very large gifts that came into Seminole Boosters last year. So despite the pandemic, the development officers at Boosters and at the foundation have been making great strides to contact alumni and friends and donors of the university online and to continue those conversations, not to put on hard solicitation pitches during this time. We're obviously being sensitive to people's personal circumstances and their economic circumstances, but we're also working hard to make sure that we're staying in touch with people so that when things do open up, we'll be able to resume solicitations apace when that happens. Next slide, please. And then the last slide just shows where the money is coming from and where it goes to. This is where donors direct their money. The bequest is a little lower than it's been in past. It's about 23% of the total here. And typically in previous years, it's been up in the 30% range. You'll see a large number on the pledge side. And again, that is a result of largely a result of the Boosters, Unconquered, and Renaissance campaigns, where we had many significant pledges come in this year, many from people on the University Board of Trustees. And I'm grateful to you for stepping up to help the university through athletics this year in that. And then last slide. Next slide. I guess this is, if I could, since this is probably the last time I'm going to get to meet and present to this group, I just want to say thank you for so many great experiences, memories, and times at Florida State University. You know, there's really nothing better than working on a noble cause with really great people, and I've really enjoyed that. I want to especially thank John and Jean Thrasher, who have been enormously kind, and John's been a mentor to me these past 6 years, some of the best years of my career, and I really value our time together and look forward to keeping in touch there. We've got a lot of, we talked about the $1 billion campaign. That also took a lot of effort by our vice presidents and our deans who traveled tirelessly to raise money for their programs. And I really value them. And for our volunteer boards, so many great friends over the years on all of our direct support organization boards and the chairs there. We've got real strength there. And I think they're working together now in ways that they weren't 10 years ago. And I'm really proud of that fact. I've got a really great senior management team too. Some of them are still in that upper left-hand corner of that photo. Andy Johns at the foundation, Andy Miller, Boosters, Kevin Graham, who started and still runs the Real Estate Foundation, Julie Decker, who is the alumni president. And before her, Scott Atwell, I want to thank Scott too, who is a big part of my 10 years here. And then three chiefs of staff actually, Allison Yu, who started with me, Tom Block, who really helped run a lot of the logistics for the Raise the Torch campaign. And most recently, Caroline Poole, who's helping run the slideshow right now, and I appreciate all she does for me, as well as my assistant, Kim Miller. And then most importantly, my wife, Dawn, who's a great love, and has obviously done so much for Florida State University too. I wouldn't be able to do a lot of what I do without her love and support and kindness through all this. So with that, I want to thank everyone. Chairman Burr, thank you for the opportunity. President Thrasher, thank you for the opportunity to serve Florida State these many years. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you as our paths go on.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate that. And as I said, we will miss you. It'll be hard to replace you, and we will really miss Dawn as well. But we wish you the best. And we know that Washington Lee, that's back in where you're from, in your home area. I know that they'll be well served. And you have many alumni in Jacksonville. So I expect to hear from you soon in Jacksonville. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully here on one of your missions and one of your visits here. Any questions for Dr. Jennings? Next, we'll have a report from Dr. Gary Ostrander. Thank you, Tom. Gary, you're recognized, Vice President for Research.
Thank you, Chairman Burr. It's always a pleasure to have a chance to talk to the board. I'm hoping my slides will come up, which I'm going to try to make happen right now, and we will hope for the best. Hopefully you folks, are you seeing the slides?
We are not, Gary.
That's unfortunate. All righty, I am unfortunately, I've got the slides here on the screen and I'm not getting them up, and I'm not one to waste people's time. So I'm going to go ahead and wing this without the slides, which will be pretty easy to do. When I talked to you folks last month, I had indicated that, okay, here come the slides, I think.
Does everyone have those slides now? Whoever put them up? Gary, you in charge, or you need someone to move them for you?
I'm in charge, it looks like. Okay. Last month I put up this slide as the money slide, and it showed a $14.8 million lag over the prior year. The prior year, of course, being the all-time record year for FSU. And I made the case that this was an artifact, and I do need someone to advance the slides for me if they could. So, and what I had pointed out to you is that we expected a payment for the Mag Lab, and we had a center at FSU that we were expecting a $10 million award. So on the next slide, you see what the difference a month makes. At the end of April, we were $5 million ahead of our record year. The Mag Lab money came in, and our Center for Advanced Power Systems had received a $10 million award as well for facilities and infrastructure upgrades. So with 60 days left in the fiscal year, everything's looking really good. And so let's go ahead to the next slide. And this is as of this week. Now, I know you're looking at the right side of the slide, but I'm going to draw your attention to the left side of the slide first and note the stabilization of proposals that are leaving the university this year over last year. You know, there'd been a period of time as we had increasing awards year on year after year, that the number of proposals leaving the university were going down because folks were so busy with their work. That is stabilizing, which is good. Our pattern of 3 up years followed by a down year, we're now into our 5th up year. And drawing your attention to the right side of the slide, as much as there's an artifact for deficits, sometimes there's an artifact for surpluses. That 19.5 million also includes $14 million in CARES funding from stimulus funding. That's not directly attributable to research activity of our faculty. The real number effectively is going to be a $4.5 million surplus. So with 26 days left in the fiscal year, we're $4.5 million ahead of our record year. We're putting out plenty of proposals. We're particularly excited about how many federal dollars are coming in because those tend to come with full overhead. So I will have more to talk to you about next time, I anticipate, was at the end of the fiscal year. On the next slide, which I'll be on for a little while, I'll tell you that we're continuing to have our research continuity Zoom meetings. We're averaging over 150 participants in each of the meetings. It's hard to believe we're had 11 of these already. It's a chance to provide an overview on research issues. As you may know, about 4.5 weeks ago, we opened up the campus and allowed 25% of our researchers back on campus. A lot of stipulations in place, social distancing, folks wearing masks, density kept very low. And the weekly meetings are a chance to talk through issues and problems and to figure out where we're going. I have a COVID-19 research continuity committee. It's made up of folks from HR, from environmental health and safety, research faculty, as well as research administrators. They guided us as we first opened up and started doing research, one of the first big activities to return to campus. And they set up, and what we set up is that we were going to allow folks back on campus for 3 weeks, and then we're going to spend 2 weeks closely monitoring COVID infection rates in Leon County, in Tallahassee, in zip codes around the university. We were going to be looking at spot checking, how folks were doing in terms of keeping their masks on, keeping appropriate social distancing, appropriate densities, what have you. After 3 weeks, we were going to go into 2 weeks of just intensely monitoring that before we would expand. That 5th week, or the end of the 2 week of intense monitoring, ends next week. Everything is been going incredibly well. We've had no instances where we had to go in and deep clean because somebody presented with a COVID infection. The numbers aren't going down in Leon County, but it's not a steep increase anymore. So as of right now, it's looking pretty good. Our plan then is next Wednesday, if everything continues to hold up through the weekend and first part of next week, is that we'll go to 50% of normal density for researchers on campus. We'll start to allow graduate students back on campus. We'll do some very slight relaxation on human subjects, research that involves human-to-human interaction. We will not allow any work with at-risk populations yet on the campus. And we'll have a variety of other stipulations in place. I anticipate we're going to be in this phase for an extended period of time because soon the campus will be bringing more people back. And as more people come back into the community and more activity occurs, and the governor obviously has moved the state into phase 2, we really want to make sure that everything's okay before we continue to expand our research presence. So I'll keep you updated and apprised on that, but it's going well. And I think the faculty are pleased that with us going to 50% and realizing that you've got 7 days in a week and you've got 24 hours in a day, that they have the opportunity to stagger staff and graduate students in their own time on campus so they can get pretty much everybody on campus when they need to be on campus to do what they need to do. I'd like to spend a moment to talk to you briefly about a COVID testing center. You know, Tallahassee is the capital of the 3rd largest state in the union, yet our COVID testing for the most part has to go outside the city, and sometimes it goes outside the state. That results in a 48-hour turnaround time in the best case scenario right now, and sometimes it's longer than that. When you think about a functioning university, you think about the high density of students and dormitories, sororities, fraternities. You think about their moving around on campus and then moving around in the community. You really can appreciate how much it would mean to have testing capability, significant testing capability in conjunction with your campus. And so what we've been doing is working to set up a test facility for FSU. It'll be at the Innovation Park. We took possession of some space earlier this week. We put in computer drops and security card swipes on Monday. We tore up carpeting and did some other demolition on Tuesday. Yesterday, we put down linoleum, which is what you need in laboratory floors. As I'm speaking to you right now, all of the space is being painted. Tomorrow, that floor is going to be sealed and waxed, and the final electricity is going to be put in. That's a good thing, because next week, we're going to be accepting delivery on a number of expensive PCR machines, other necessary lab equipment, and reagents, so that we can put in place a COVID test center that would allow us to test in this community, and particularly on this campus. We have two primary objectives that are guiding this. One is incredibly high accuracy. We have to have the highest possible accuracy. So everything is set up to optimize accuracy. The second objective is we need to be able to turn around results in 8 to 24 hours. Think of the scenario where a student wakes up in a dormitory on Saturday morning and isn't feeling so good. And the question is it COVID-19? Is it seasonal flu? Or is it that maybe they stopped at one too many watering holes on Friday night? We need to be able to answer that question very quickly. We need to be able to take appropriate action on campus. So this is very complicated. There's a lot of pieces left to be worked out and to be put into place. But just letting you know that we're moving rapidly towards developing a facility that will help the campus. It'll be a place to deal with priority cases. In no way is this going to be able to take care of everything we would like in the community. Kyle, Sally, Amy, everybody has been working really hard figuring that out as well. And this will be a part of that solution. And finally, I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to finish off with a few feel-good slides. The next slide reminds you of our COVID collaborative collision we had on April 10th. We brought folks together from across the campus in different disciplines to talk about COVID-19, including community members. I told you at our last board meeting that we were going to have a grant program come out of this. And as you see summarized on the next slide, we were able to make 26 awards, nearly $500,000 in awards. And the intent here was to provide our faculty with the opportunity to get preliminary data so they could be responsive to RFAs, requests for applications from state agencies and federal agencies around COVID. We're expecting to have more of these coming out in the fall. In fact, they're looking to be coming out in the early fall, and we want our faculty to have data so they can be responsive. As you can see on the slide, the usual suspects, biology, biomedical sciences, you'd expect proposals from them. But among our top proposals included nutrition, sports management, the fine arts, criminology. And I'm going to conclude with 3 slides where I'm going to sample 6 of the projects out of the 26 that were funded from 60 applications. The first one's already been receiving a lot of attention and press. This project is focused on the scenario that we hope does not happen this year, but what happens if we have a hurricane and we have to evacuate at the same time we're dealing with quarantine or incomplete, we haven't completed the phasing out of the COVID crisis. Folks are going to have some difficult decisions, whether they be individuals evacuating or whether they be agencies, because the behaviors you want to see in evacuation are very different than the behaviors you want to see in quarantine. So this is a very timely project coming out of engineering. Joe Schlenoff, faculty member in chemistry, is a polymer chemist. He's had over 30 patents in his time here at Florida State University. He's developed a new polymer that, in the presence of the COVID virus, will destroy the membrane, the capsid protein that protects the virus. It's one thing to do that in a test tube. The next step is to take that and incorporate that into a material like you'd have on a desktop or a counter and see if you can still break down the capsid layer and knock back the virus. So that has real application. On the next slide, we have 2 presentations. One of them comes from our criminology program. And when this quarantine went into place and folks were losing their jobs and folks were having to quarantine at home, it was easy to predict, unfortunately, that there probably was going to be a rise in domestic violence. And unfortunately, that happened. At about the same time that was starting to occur, over a month ago, our faculty members were thinking about what happens what are the impacts of the pandemic on prejudice, on hate crimes, or what happens in victimization, what happens with all this stress people are under. I don't have to say anymore. Everybody's seen what's happened the last week in this country. There could not have been a better timed project than this one. And so we're very optimistic, and we think some very important contributions are going to be made from this project. Hopefully help all of us. Jonathan Dennis is a professor in our biological sciences department. He's working on the machinery that controls the genetics of protein expression in your cells. You know, when the COVID virus gets in your respiratory tract, you have a response from your lungs. We've all heard about it, and there's a differential response between older people and younger people. Jonathan has some data to suggest that COVID actually gets in and impacts the machinery, if you would, that moves the DNA around in the immune system, that actually drives the whole immune response. So this is fundamental aspects of your cellular machinery that are subject to the COVID virus. If this is true, understanding how this works and how this plays out is going to play a huge role in developing a vaccine as well as developing therapeutics. And on my final slide, I've got an example from biology, from biomedical sciences in the med school of one of a number of our faculty that are working on therapeutics. Dr. Tomko has worked with the SARS virus, understands how COVID works, and is working with what we call small molecules to inhibit the replication of the virus, and has some very promising data. And then the final project I'm telling you about, again, reflecting the diversity of our faculty at Florida State, in many ways is one of the most fascinating to me. When we were all locked down and, you know, all staying at home and unable to congregate in spaces, one of the things we couldn't do is go to the museum. We couldn't go to the theater, whether it was a movie theater or whether it was to see a concert, to see a play. We couldn't go to a festival anymore. And what's happened is some of these have begun to move online. And one of our faculty members in the Museum of Fine Arts, Meredith Lynn, has gotten together with a number of other faculty across the arts disciplines at FSU. And I think we all know that FSU is known for the arts. It excels in the arts, whether it's performing arts or paint or pottery or theater or music. And what they've done is they proposed to develop a virtual online exhibition performance space for this events to be able to take place. But more significantly, I think, is they're planning to use that as a tool to understand how folks would use that technology and how they can optimize the technology. We're all afraid that we may not be able to get back to museums or get back to dances or get back to concerts very soon. And as such, this vehicle of being able to participate, to interact in a real way online is going to be incredibly important. And that's something that they're focused on. And I think most of us can agree that if there hasn't been too many times in our lives that having a chance to participate in the arts would be really, really beneficial. So with that, I'm done for the day and available for any questions you might have. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Dr. Ostrander. And first, I want to thank you and really your entire team and Dr. Fogarty for working so collaboratively with the university and trying to help develop the plan that's going to be presented to us to keep our students and faculty and administration safe when they return to campus in the fall. And second, I'd like to thank you for explaining each of those projects, all 6 of them, in a way that even I could understand them. And they are fascinating and makes me proud. I think makes all of us proud of the work that's going on at Florida State University. So I thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Ostrander?
Mr. Chairman, I want to add one thing about to Gary's. And I appreciate, first of all, appreciation. I may be wrong, Gary, and all of our team know a lot more about the details of what we're providing to you and the board in terms of reopening. But my opinion, based on everything I've read and understand, is that the testing lab that we will create at Florida State University is critical to being successful when we come back in the fall. We have to be able to test, we have to be able to trace, and we have to be able to do that in a very, very efficient and quick manner in order to keep any hot spots from expanding. And so, Gary, I thank you and all of the team that's worked on that. It's not easy to do. There's a lot of complications with it. He described, the fact that we have a place. That's one thing. Getting the lab, getting the authority, getting the permit for doing that, and then getting the staff to undertake all that is a very, very difficult thing to get started by the time we come back to school in the fall. It's a critical part of our overall plan, and I'm very much appreciative of all the work you and your team have done.
Thank you,
Thank
President
It's
Thrasher.
absolutely a team effort with everybody in the cabinet.
Thank you both. Any other comments or questions for Dr. Ostrander? All right, next we're going to go back in our agenda for our athletics update. Athletic Director Coburn is with us, and athletics is a fairly dynamic aspect right now in university life, and Athletic Director Coburn needed all the time possible to bring you the latest information. So, David, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. It's another dull day in athletics. And by the way, that testing site, Gary, is very important to us, just for the record, so that all of you know. What he accomplishes over there will be very important to us. I want to start this morning with 3 NCAA ACC issues, the first being name, image, and likeness. We've talked some about that in the past. The Florida legislature passed a bill addressing some of these issues that will take effect July of 2021. That bill's not yet been signed by the governor, but I anticipate that it will be. Senator Rubio is supposed to file a bill shortly that will address many of these issues. It would preempt state law and would give regulatory jurisdiction to the Federal Trade Commission. We are supportive of his bill. The NCAA vote on name, image, and likeness has been delayed until January of 2021. The proposal is still in flux. Several points continue to be of great concern to the Autonomy 5 conferences, of which we're a member. Those include agent influence and how they will be regulated, the use of university marks and symbols, or lack of recruiting controls, and our ability to effectively monitor for compliance. The next issue, out in California, the Ninth Circuit affirmed the federal district court decision in the Alston case. You may recall that the basic holding in that case was that the NCAA had violated federal antitrust law by limiting the value of educational scholarships that may be awarded to student athletes. The court took the position that this may be done school by school or conference by conference, but not nationally, not on a national basis. The court decision also expanded the definition of, quote, educational benefits, unquote, quote, that may be awarded to student athletes. Institutions would be permitted to give money to athletes to pay for things such as computers and musical instruments, and, quote, other products and services used for academic pursuits, unquote, which is not defined anywhere and could mean almost anything, including I need a car to get to class. The NCAA may also not bar scholarships to athletes for study abroad programs or financial aid given after athletes have exhausted their eligibility to compete. So I think you can see that that's going to have some serious impact on costs for athletic programs, and also potentially opens the door for some serious recruiting issues. The final issue is the transfer issue, which has basically 2 pieces: the graduate transfer piece And since we spoke, the NCAA has substantially loosened the restrictions on those transfers. Graduate transfers will now be able to enroll in additional undergraduate majors or minors, or in some cases, certificate programs at their new institutions. So that's a significant change for graduate transfers. The one-time transfer exception for undergraduates was tabled in May and is undecided until at least the beginning of next year. And I don't believe will take effect until at least the 21-22 academic year. Our coaches continue to have major concerns about that proposal, including how the transfer flexibility will interact with the scholarship caps, the impact on APR, and the potential for poaching. So when we put all three of those issues together, I think you can see that the potential for recruiting violations to get completely out of hand is quite high, and that's a major issue for all of us. Speaking of recruiting, we are in a recruiting dead period, which has been extended through June 30th. In addition, no camps will be permitted this summer in football. Both of these have been handicaps for Coach Norvell and his staff as they attempt to establish relationships with coaches and student athletes across the state. Notwithstanding that, we already have twice the number of verbal commitments we've had at this point in time in any of the last 3 years. In the last week alone, we've added 2 very good transfers and 3 commitments from high school athletes. So I think recruiting continues to do well, and I'm very pleased with their efforts there. Spring sport eligibility. When we last talked, the NCAA was discussing whether or not to grant spring sport athletes an additional year of eligibility because their seasons had been canceled. They ultimately decided to do that. We have about 23 seniors who are going to return and take advantage of that additional year. The cost to us will be a little over $500,000. We've provided about half of that money centrally from funding reserved for academics. Coaches of the individual sports are responsible for the rest from either their operating budgets or from their restricted accounts. The current operating posture for sports is that right now we are planning to begin seasons on time and play a full slate of contests. That's right now. Whether this happens obviously will be determined by people far smarter than I and at a far higher pay grade than mine. There are all kinds of contingency plans being developed at both the ACC and the NCAA level. You know that we have begun testing for COVID in stages with football student athletes. We will move on after we finish football to men's and women's basketball, and then to soccer, volleyball, and cross country, the other fall sports. The dates for the sports beyond football remain uncertain because I want to be sure how it goes with football before we proceed with those. Voluntary campus activities have been authorized by the NCAA beginning June 1, which was the beginning of this week. Football has begun voluntary strength and conditioning workouts in stages. These have been carefully constructed to protect the health and the safety of both the student athletes and the staff. Anyone who tests positive for the virus will be isolated per university protocol, and tracing will be done. We have a working group planning for the resumption of sports, and they're examining many different scenarios. We have a detailed plan in place already for the use of the Moore Center and the return of football. That includes signage, symptom checks, distancing, mask requirements, and sanitation. We're working on similar plans for basketball and the other fall sports. But remember, those involve different facilities, so they're a little more complicated. We're working with booster staff on potential scenarios for the football season at home. These include various levels of seating capacity in the stadium from 0 to 100%. Obviously, this is very complicated because we're going to have distancing involved, but we're going to have some families or couples who have been living together who want to sit together, notwithstanding that. Student seating will be accommodated. The Chiefs have to be accommodated, and presumably some visiting fans, although there are discussions ongoing about that. I will tell you that it may very well be that it's not going to be possible to get into Doak Campbell this fall without a season ticket. That hasn't been decided, but that is one of the possibilities. The boosters continue to raise money. They're pretty close to their goal for the annual fund. The Unconquered campaign now has commitments of up to about $93 million, which includes about $15 million from the Renaissance campaign. They've done very well on both, and they're continuing to work very, very hard. The search for the new executive director continues. We've had one round of very good interviews, and we have, I think, an excellent group of candidates remaining. There's no doubt in my mind that we will get a very good replacement for Andy Miller. Academically, we had a very good semester. Thanks in no small way to Dr. McCrory's beneficence with pass-fail. Our overall GPA was 3.404 for the department for the semester, and our football GPA was 3.177. The department GPA for the academic year was 3.229. So a very, very successful year for us academically. Our degree completion program continues to produce very, very good results. Since last spring of 2019, we've had 10 former student athletes across multiple sports return to get their degrees and finish and graduate. So our academic unit is doing very, very good work. I'm very proud of them, and I want to publicly thank them for that. I didn't get to hear the president's remarks, so I will just tell you as an aside that Coach Hamilton is going to speak to graduation at the end of the summer semester in July. President may have told you that already, but Coach is tickled pink. He's just thrilled, and I think he'll do a great job. I'm very happy about that. I want to say I couldn't be more pleased with the way all our staff and our coaches and our student athletes have responded to the COVID crisis. Everyone stayed positive. The coaches have been consistently understanding and supportive, and the staff have worked very, very hard. I really appreciate what they've done in the last couple of months. It's been of an immense help. I want to tell you that Coach just finished a closed team meeting with the football team. I'm told the dialogue was open and very candid, and that it went well. So I believe we're moving on there. I also want to talk to you about a Zoom conversation I had last night with about 75 student athletes to discuss Mr. Floyd's death and other similar incidents here in Tallahassee and across the country. It was interesting, it was educational and emotional. And by the way, Kyle, I want to tell you that Lieutenant Washington participated and did his usual excellent job. So thanks very much to him. The student athletes have a great deal of respect for Lieutenant Washington. But they were open and candid with all of us. Their emotions ran the gamut that you would expect. They're angry, they're hurt, they're frustrated, they're concerned, and some of them are just scared. They had a number of good ideas about what we can do in athletics to help. We had a second-year law student talk about voting. We had a young woman suggest a mixed race buddy system to help them understand each other better. We had several talk about police training. And we had several talk about communications with coaches. I will tell you that they challenged me a little bit about speaking out on their behalf. They asked if I was concerned about offending rich, powerful boosters and supporters. I thought about that, and I thought about you as a group, and I told them no, I wasn't. That I'm very comfortable about where your hearts are, and I know most of our supporters, and I'm very comfortable where they are. As all of you know, I'm more of a listener than a speaker. Frankly, I'd rather have a root canal than make a speech. But I want to talk to you for a few minutes on their behalf. These student athletes are important. They're important to me. I know they're important to you. They're why we do what we do. They're important because they represent our future as well as the current situation. Athletics is more than a mirror in which we see the reflection of society as it is, the good and the bad. It's also the lens through which we see society as it could and should be. Athletics is where we see young men and women of all races and nationalities competing with each other, cooperating with each other, knocking each other down, helping each other up, screaming at each other one minute, leaping into each other's arms in sheer joy the next. You and I see all these things in athletics, but more importantly, our children and our grandchildren see them. And that changes their perception of how society could and should be. Carla Williams, who is the AD at the University of Virginia, said something really interesting Tuesday on our AD's call. She said it's hard to change a human heart. And that is so true. You know, burning buildings, breaking windows, destroying property. Those things don't change human hearts, they harden them. But when Travis Rudolph went in to that school cafeteria and sat down with that little boy, that changed human hearts. So our student athletes know that it can be done, and they know how to do it. I read yesterday that someone said that coaches in America are going to have to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because what has happened in the last few days has changed America, I think, forever. We're all going to have to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. So when that happens here, when student athletes speak up, and they're going to speak up all over America, we're going to see and hear things from athletes that will make all of us uncomfortable. And when it happens here at Florida State, I ask that you not be upset, that you be understanding, that you not be angry, but that you be supportive. These student athletes are determined to help change things. And we in the Florida State administration and athletics, all our coaches, our staff, everyone are determined to help them and to help them make real sustainable change happen, because this absolutely has to stop. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
David, thank you for that, and thank you for those sentiments. You didn't hear us earlier, but we talked about the FSU's commitment to sustainable change and to listening, and thank you for your leadership in this area. And I think it is time for change, and I think certainly this institution, this administration, this board will be supportive. And as I know the hearts of most of our supporters, and I think they'll be supportive as well. And I think this is an important message for us to hear. I'm very happy to hear that the coach met with the players today after these morning's headlines, and there's progress being made there, and that everyone is listening and will help make a difference. So thank you for your leadership. I am confident under your leadership that we will be in a better place in the future and with time to come. So thank you for that. Let me open this up to any other comments or questions anybody else may have.
And very special thank you to David and when his university and his good friend John called him into this role, it's probably thank you for doing it. And we're very fortunate to have you there. I think your passion and love for the university reflects what you're doing and how you're doing it, your voice and communicating and you're caring for people. So Ed and our thank you from this board to you, David, for what you're doing and the way you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? Thank you again, David. Let's move on with our general counsel's update. Carolyn, you're recognized.
I don't actually know how to follow that. Can I go back and follow Gary?
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, in my private practice for about 10 years before I came here, a large part of my practice was defending excessive force cases. And I saw all sorts of things representing Key West and lots of other cities where there were founded claims, unfounded claims, and the whole range of it. So I've been watching this very closely and join with everybody else in being proud of Chief Brown and her whole staff. Because I know how hard this all is for them. Okay, so getting back to what I was going to say. So you've heard today, you heard at our last meeting, and you'll hear at our meeting on the 18th, how much the president and the chairman have been engaging with the Board of Governors in order to make decisions that affect the system, in order to work on our plans. And each time the chairman or the president goes to one of those meetings, the lawyers get the next call with the whole list of assignments. And I'm sure the CFOs and everyone else does as well, but I only know my part. So usually what comes out of that is a lot of questions raised with ideas that the presidents have for how to reopen the campus. And it's very interesting to watch as the University of Florida has a sophisticated medical infrastructure all the way down to, Gulf Coast that doesn't really have any of that. And here at Florida State, we're somewhere in between. We have a medical school, but we don't have the large hospital infrastructure that the University of Florida has. But we're pretty scrappy, and we come up with ideas, and we come up with ways to meet those needs. So as questions have arisen, we're not used to handling, for example, a large amount of employee protected health information that is protected by HIPAA because we don't have the large hospital. So we're starting a little bit from scratch when we say, okay, if we're going to have this testing lab, we're going to have access to a lot of protected data. And we need to make sure that we're treating that protected data correctly and that it's going in the right hands and it has the right protections. Another thing that we have that other employers don't have is, we can't forget that we are an arm of the government. Everything we do is under color of state law, which means that when we're talking about intrusive medical testing of employees and mandating that as a condition of the workforce, the ability to work here is conditioned on you letting your employer do something that is somewhat invasive to your body, constitutional issues come up that don't come up with private employers. So each time the presidents and the chairman meet, we come up with new ideas. We go through this whole decision tree about the legal issues. And, I say this all the time that I know a little bit about a lot of stuff, but I have a lot of folks who are experts in the office. And one of them is newer that has proved her worth already, which is a perfect example of, good luck as preparation meets opportunity. Is that when Gary Ostrander had a lawyer retire that works primarily in his area, and we hired someone and expecting another retirement. We made a hire in the fall of someone who came to us from Phoebe Putney Health Systems, and she'd worked there since 2011. So she had experience in academic and hospital partnerships before. So just by maybe luck, maybe mine and Gary's good picker, whatever it is, she's been here to help us, and we've relied on her heavily since she arrived in the late fall, and has become, more and more involved, and added a lot to this discussion of how do we quickly and urgently do something we don't normally do. So it's been a heavy lift, but her expertise has been so phenomenal. I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, how the partnership has developed not only on the state university system because of crisis, but the ACC Council have begun to work more closely together in the last year about a number of issues and sharing a lot of information. It's like suddenly joining maybe a national law firm instead of just having your one small law office of 11 lawyers who then have, satellite offices all over the East Coast. Because we share information and share a lot of our strategies on the name, image, and likeness, which you've heard mentioned a few times, and the president has heard mentioned a few thousand times. But we've been sharing information on how we're handling all of our issues with respect to return to campus and residence halls. And it's nice to have that group of peers and those relationships growing and sharing information. So all that alongside the regular stuff of the end of year contract renewals that we're handling, lots and lots of volume. And while we do that, that coincides with one thing we've undertaken in the last few months, which is to look at a lot of our contract language and make sure it is as protective in emergencies and unexpected situations as we want it to be. Sometimes we've all had interruptions in our business. We've had lots of interruptions in our contracts, and we've been on both sides of it. We've been wanting relief from interruptions, and then we have had other people who interrupt our services. And for example, we have a few internships, of a clinical sort that still go forward even in these circumstances. But sometimes our students have not been given what they promised, and we've had to work on those contracts and make sure that, we do the right thing by the students to make sure their experience is followed up on by these folks who have promised to provide those internships to our students. In the meantime, we have a K through 12 school or two, actually two. We have two K through 12 schools, and while their legal issues in times of a crisis overlap significantly with ours, sometimes they have different and unique ones. And so we've been in touch with Florida High a lot. Florida High's board counsel, John Moyle, is actually my neighbor, so I see him a lot, but we have stayed in touch at least weekly to talk over issues. They wanted some help in how to return high school athletics. They're looking at a lot of the similar issues and trying to look at what to do with their students for the fall in athletics. So we're able to facilitate and lend some of our expertise to our K through 12 school, which is really the benefit of being a developmental research school. You get the benefit of the relationship with the university and the expertise of the university. So all the while, we're figuring out how to navigate the court system, doing things online that we'd normally do live in front of judges or in front of hearing officers and all of that. So we are navigating and continuing the business of the university. I've heard a couple of process servers have turned up at people's houses because they don't know how to get in Westcott and whether they can get in Westcott. So if the chairman may have a few more of those coming than usual, I don't know, but I know a few of them have been. But with that, I will entertain any questions, and if not, we'll get on to our next agenda item.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, the family's a little concerned when the process server shows up, but so far it's been nothing too important for me. And thank you for handling everything. Does anybody have any questions for Carolyn? Carolyn, thank you for your service and what you do to help. I know it's a trying time for everybody. We appreciate that. We'll move on to the chair's report. I think your agenda will have action items listed as the president's evaluation and the contract. There's really no action right now to be taken on the evaluation. I would like to ask the trustee Bezette, who chairs our governance committee, to give everyone an update on the evaluation process so you'll know what to expect. So trustee Bezette, if I could lean on you to do that, if you're with us. And you're not on mute. Billy? Well, let me go ahead. If he joins us, that will be great. But each year there's an evaluation process.
Hey, Ed, I'm sorry. I damn pushed the wrong button and the whole screen went blank. So,
All right.
but I'm back.
All right. Why don't you provide us the update on the process for the evaluation?
Sure. As you all know, every year we have the opportunity as trustees to evaluate the performance of our president. The purpose of my brief presentation here is just to remind you that that time is about here. I think next month in July, we'll all be receiving our presidential evaluations, and you'll be given a timeline from Liz Hurst as far as when those are due back. And then, of course, those will be reviewed and distilled and reduced and then circulated back to everybody. So we know as a body how all the trustees feel that President Thrasher has been performing. And so, again, that's going to happen next month. And so just keep an eye out on that. And I thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate the update. There is an item that does take action. And if you remember our last trustee meeting, I talked about my feelings that we needed to begin discussions with the president about extending his tenure, his term longer than where it's due to expire. His current contract, this board voted to extend that his contract for a year last year. And he's that contract extension was approved by the Board of Governors, and he is currently serving under the final year of his contract, which is due to expire in November of this year, November of 20. We previously also voted to extend his contract further. That would have taken it through February of 21 to allow for a smooth transition. That motion has never been taken to the Board of Governors for approval and really is not in effect at this point in time. At that point, I have, since our last meeting, met with President Thrasher. He has had discussions with his family and with Gene, and certainly with his passion and dedication and commitment to making FSU a better place and continuing to make it a better place, certainly understands that given the environment, the pandemic environment, now the racial and social issues we're dealing with, but certainly the pandemic environment made it very challenging and difficult to transition leadership, and the need for continuity was stronger than ever. And I'm pleased to report that he is willing, if this board so chooses, to accept a one-year extension of his contract that would take it until November of 2021. I would like to, and our motion would be subject to final approval by the Board of Governors. So I'd like to see if there's any questions about that, any conversation about that. I am grateful he's agreed to extend his term. And if not, entertain a motion to extend President Thrasher's contract for 1 year to expire in November of 2021. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Trustee Henderson moved. Is there a second?
Second, Judah.
I think that was a unanimous second.
Was that June?
I think everybody just said Trustee Duda with the second. Let's open that up for a discussion or any questions, either of me or I think President Thrasher is with us, or of him.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
Any other questions?
We're thinking more lifetime, John, but maybe.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Like sign. I think let the record show that that motion carried unanimously. And I want to extend my grateful and my thanks to John for willing to serve, and for, not that it's a shock, you've always put Florida State University first, behind your family and your God probably, but certainly first in many ways. And I really appreciate the job you've done and the job and your willingness to stay on and make sure that the transition will be at a time hopefully smoother than at this point in time.
Thank Gene and your family for us too.
I will. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Please tell your other boss thank you too.
we will be presenting this to the Board of Governors for approval. I don't think the motion dealing with the extension through February 21 that'll just be left alone. I don't think we need to take any action on that. Carolyn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but since that didn't get approved by BOG, I don't think that's in effect anyway. And so we'll just move with this one motion to extend his contract through November of 2021. Regarding compensation issues, that'll all come later in the year after the evaluation process is done, and we'll deal with that as we normally do towards the end of the calendar year. A couple more comments I'd like to make. One, Carolyn talked about the Board of Governors and the process that's been ongoing. And she and their provost and many of our staff have been serving on the task force to help develop the white paper that you all saw that got approved last week by the Board of Governors, giving each university guidance on how to reopen our campuses. The president and I participated in a weekly call with the Board of Governors, and I have to tell you, it has been an impressive job by the Board of Governors, their leadership, the chancellor, the chairman, in leading this effort and coming to what I think was a great outline, giving each of the university the guidance they need. It has been collaborative. They have listened. They have done a great job responding to really the universities who understand this issue the best. And I don't always take the time to thank the Board of Governors, but I certainly want to take the time to thank them and the great work they have done in getting us to this point. We will be, as you know, reconvening this board on June the 18th and then presenting our final plan to them in person on June the 23rd. So that will be the process we have, but they have done a great job. I want to just conclude my comments by talking briefly about the challenges this university has faced. We faced the pandemic challenge. We are now facing the racial and social injustice challenge before we've even come out of the pandemic challenge. And I think this university has done it with great admiration, with great respect, great diligence, and great professionalism. We're not through it. There's tough times ahead of us, but I am confident that our better days are ahead, that this administration and this university at some point will look back and say that we are a better university, we will better serve our students, better serve our student athletes, and we are a better all around as a family for what we're going through today, the leadership that we have. So there will be great days ahead. I have no doubt about that. And I'm looking forward to those times when we can reflect back and think about all the lessons we've learned and watch. It's not how it's adversity hits everybody. It's how you deal with that, the true test of character of individuals and institutions. And I think we'll be proud of how Florida State University comes out of this process. I'll now open it up for open forum for each of our trustees. We have that at every opportunity, and I want to be sure that each of you have a chance to share any thoughts that you want to before we adjourn. Anybody? Open forum? All right, well, I thank you all for that. I thank you for your participation. I think our committee meetings yesterday were the first time we used that format. It seemed to work certainly via Zoom. I think it may work in person. We will see how that goes. The staff works hard all the way around, but when we have these meetings, they work extremely hard. Lena and Liz and Paula, all the great work that you do, and all the technical staff for helping us meet online. And we know we have the June 18th board meeting. We look forward to that. And if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. So moved.
Second, well, given that, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all very much for your participation, your support of Florida State University.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.